profile.
Let me see.
Horizontal mode.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Perfect.
Oh, yeah.
No
This is
problem.
why he's the producer de extraordinaire. Christopher, you're great at what you do, sir.
So how is everybody?
Doing well. All things considered.
I'm exhausted, actually. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're spent. We're spent. We're gonna try to smile, and we're gonna try to talk about some tough stuff and share some stories, and
Yeah.
we're just gonna talk. We're gonna talk like people do.
So before we start, James.
Oh, we are.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to say something really quick to James.
Before you do, just know I do have the Agree to Disagree group. We are streaming live right now. Before we start, just so you know.
All right. Cool. So then,
Okay.
so happy Monday to everyone that is in the, Agree to Disagree. I'll say that, throughout the years, I've had some very powerful conversations, about this very topic with Brian and even also indirectly with James. And so I applaud you for taking time to talk about this, because I think that, as you have mentioned, Brian and James, you guys have mentioned, in a lot of previous posts that we were heading this way. We were on a collision course with this stuff for a long time coming. And not only is it here, but obviously I think that this is, in my opinion, how we get rid of all this shit. I think that we've given the media and even the president and the administration too much credit. I think that this is something that really we can handle as a people. And when I say people, I'm not talking about just black, white. I'm just talking as people, because it's one thing is that we are kind of the blueprint of the world. And I think that right now, I've had friends from Germany ask me, hey, is America in a civil war? And I think, and I think that that's a really, it's a tough thing. And I think that if we're going to be the America that we need to be, we have to have conversations, even if they're uncomfortable and opinionated. I mean, I think that that's one of the things that makes our country great, right?
I agree.
I just wanted to get that out the way, because some people may see me and see James and see Brian and say, well, wait, weren't you guys like going at each other's throat about race and all of these things, and so I just wanted to just get that out there, because again, I have some very interesting perspectives, especially after last night, going to an actual rally and seeing how literally like that it went from being very peaceful to I mean, by definition, very anarchist. And I think that, like I said, I have some new opinions about that whole thing. I mean, I think that what we're seeing is not only in protest of systemic racism, but I also think that there are some elements of COVID and the economic,
For sure.
paralysis of our country.
Absolutely. And Damien, if you're okay with it, I think that's the perfect intro to the show, because we have a 40-minute clock of the show, because we were doing the free version of Zoom. So we do have to bounce. If you're okay with that, we can just...
Hey, no, please, by all means, let's do
Absolutely.
it.
I want to thank each and every one of you for joining me. My name's Brian Engelman on the New American Media. This is the Agree to Disagree show. Thank you for watching on Facebook. I appreciate you, Facebook Live, and on YouTube, Twitter, all those things. I want to thank James Bates for joining me, Chris Sanders for joining me, and Damien Hall for joining me. Damien, you kind of led things off, and you got a new perspective a little bit, watching things turn on a dime. I'll just say this. I flew back from Los Angeles to the Cleveland Cavaliers 2016 championship parade, baby. But there was a shooting at the casino, at the Jack Casino. And there was a flood of people and a swarm, and it turned into chaos. This was right after all of these Islamic bombings, these radical terror bombings all across Europe, all across America. We were seeing these things. And at the height of my joy, it turned into panic. We were going down alleys. We jumped into a back door of a restaurant. It became really terrifying for me and the people I was with. So for me, things, I know what you're saying, at least in that regard for me. I saw how joy could turn into, oh my God, are we under attack? What's happening here? When elements can turn south. So Damien, you got to start. I gave a little bit of a side story that may or may not be tangentially related. Let me move over to, let's go to Chris Sanders real quick. Chris, I want to say that I think I was watching your social media posts yesterday. I believe you're walking by the Beverly Center, by the Grove, going down 3rd Street. It's an area, I mean, I lived out there for 15 years, and I saw your posts, and that might be as good of a place to start as any. Chris, can you tell us maybe what brought you out to the protest, the rally? How would you define what you went to, why you went, and what was your experience? What did you see when you were out there?
Well, I mean, this isn't my first rodeo. And what brought me out there is seeing people peacefully protest over things that people, especially the Black communities, have been protesting for forever, or since they, have sort of, been able to protest, I saw friends of mine going. I wanted to watch after them. And, I see you labeled this, what's the name of this episode?
George Floyd.
Talking
George
about
Floyd.
George Floyd and police abuse and riots, something like that.
Right.
Riots.
Okay. So honestly, I feel like this should be called the Black Lives Matter show episode, because this is what it's really about. Because George Floyd is just one of many, many Black men and women that we have seen murdered, mistreated, brutalized by the police, and other people too. The gentleman who was killed by 2 white dudes that, rolled up on him, killed him with guns. We all saw this, 3 weeks ago, right?
Oh, Mr. Arbery. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Right. Over and over and over. Children killed, not holding squirt. I mean, everyone can research this stuff, right? We're all seeing it. Will Smith himself said racism isn't getting worse, it's being filmed, and he's absolutely right. So I went because A, I want to protest this, and B, because I wanted to look out for my Black friends, honestly. I had some going. They're a little younger than me. I felt scared for their safety. I saw all that was going on. I went down there. Our Uber driver picked us up. We're all wearing masks. He says, you guys know where you're going, right? I said, we know. He's like, okay. We get there, and, I'd heard stories about already. I'd seen people posting how there were cop cars, right? We saw on fire. They were there already, though, before any of the protesters showed up. And I show up, and there are hundreds of people everywhere. The Grove is vandalized all up and down the street, things destroyed. People are everywhere. And by the way, you can go to my Instagram, you can go to my Facebook and see all the footage that I got.
What's that?
My Instagram,
Tell people where to check it out. Where do they find it?
Yeah. It's Mr. XOFER, MisterXOFER.
Okay.
And by the way, I just want to say here, I do this reluctantly coming on the show because I've had experience with Brian in the past where I've gone to New American Media stuff, and the second I give any sort of criticism of the Trump administration or something like that, people are threatening me, people are calling me names, all kinds of stuff. I really don't want that, but I'm actually going to expect it by coming on the show. Whatever. Obviously, if I'm going to protest, I'm not scared of these jerks, but I would like anyone that watches this footage to let it speak for itself, because there's a narrative going on that the Black Lives Matters protesters are going to these protests and looting and destroying. I didn't see any of that. None of it. I mean, I saw vandalism. I saw the results of looting, but it was not the Black Lives Matter protesters. And you can watch my feed. You can watch my story. You can see the video that I caught of hours of the police pushing us back, people getting hailed with rubber bullets, people running, gas in the air, people fleeing, wow. Women got shot in the head, and hundreds of people. I mean, it was chaos. There were a lot of police. They pushed the crowd back. probably at least a mile, you know? And the entire time, the protesters kept their hands up, said, chanted various names of Black Americans who've been killed by the police. They said, hands up, don't shoot. Pushed it back, pushed it back, pushed it back, pushed it back, hours and hours. The sun set. No violence. No violence. So this narrative that Black Lives Matter protesters are showing, at least in Los Angeles, yeah, but I would say across America, because I'm seeing reports from everywhere of police coming together with the protesters, all these sort of things. There's people that I'm very frustrated with right now because they are equating protesters to looters, saying it's the same thing. And they'll post up a video of stores on Melrose getting
Melrose
vandalized,
absolutely ransacked. I spent a lot of time over there, and it is it looks like something out of Mogadishu. It looks like something out of Baghdad.
Yeah,
it's absolutely sick.
It looks like anywhere where you have this sort of upheaval and thieves take advantage of it. Right. That's what it looks like. So don't show me this video of a bunch. It's like you show me a video of a bunch of people coming up and smashing windows, getting into stuff. But that's not a protest area. There's no protests going on there. You can't like looting and protesting are two different things. And trying to give this narrative. So one thing is there's a video going around, right, of where I was. I saw this happen. There's these two women. They're not Black women. They come up and they're tagging the Starbucks there, or whatever, at the Grove. I saw this.
I saw this.
You saw that, right? And it's been going around. And a Black Lives Matter woman comes up, a Black woman comes up and says, "Hey, don't do this. This does not help us."
I think I saw that same video. Yeah, I saw that same video on Twitter. It sounds like the same one I saw on Twitter that someone had posted of, the two white girls that were, tagging the Starbucks, and the Black girl comes up and she's like, "Listen, don't do this. Don't do this." Yeah. I mean, here in Cleveland, I was, I live in Lakewood, which is one of the first inner ring west suburbs of Cleveland. Now, I was born and raised in Cleveland, grew up in Cleveland, pretty much most of my life. And my wife and I we just went out to Lakewood Park, which has a beautiful view of downtown Cleveland, right, from there. And I looked and I saw smoke. I saw plumes of smoke, and I'm going, what the heck is going on? I said, oh my God, my city's on fire, And when we left from there, I just felt compelled, like I had to go down there, I have to see what is going on. And, when we got down there and we had to, they had all the freeway exits and shoreway exits to get into downtown were completely cut off. You could get out. So if you're already down there and trying to get out, they were letting you out, but nobody was able to get in. Because I know the city very well, I was able to get in through a back way, down through the flats and come up out. Brian, you're familiar with Cleveland and where West 9th is, West 9th, West 6th. The Justice Center, right? The Justice Center is right there, at least from my perspective, where I was at West 3rd and West St. Clair. I saw West 6th, which is the warehouse district, which is a very popular area, a lot of restaurants, bars and things, windows busted out, completely just shattered. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, oh my God, like you said, it looked like a war zone. They had tagged the, the graffiti, the Justice Center. And I'm driving with my wife, we're in the car driving into this, and I see the crowds kind of moving. What scared the hell out of me was 50 feet in front of my eyes, I see a group of people going towards the Chevy Malibu that's just parked on the side of the road. I don't think there was anybody in it. I don't believe there was. I think it was just parked there. And next thing you know, people are rocking it back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And this thing flips up and I'm like, oh my God. I knew in that moment I had to get out of there, because I knew if I probably drove another 50 feet, they might have, who knows what have happened. They could have smashed my windows out. They could have started rocking my vehicle. Who would have known? But we got out of there and we came back home, immediately. And I turned on the TV and there's, scenes from LA, from Minneapolis, from all over the country. And it's like the whole damn country's on fire. And my immediate reaction was just sadness. I think what happened to George Floyd and what's happened to, other individuals at the hands of, police is a tragedy. But it's deeper than just this. These are scars that go all the way back to 1619, and I've been talking about this even on my own Facebook feed. Right, these are things that are deeply rooted within our society, deeply rooted within, in the culture, if you will, and this was the fever pitch. This is the precipice. This was an awakening. My mother lived through, my parents both, lived through civil rights. And I talked to my mom yesterday, and she says, I was here. My mom was here when they rioted here in Cleveland back in 1966, the Huff Riots. And
Wow.
the mayor of Cleveland gave obviously several interviews over this weekend, but one that struck me was from a local media outlet that a friend of mine, runs and produces. And he says, and the mayor basically said, I'm paraphrasing here, but, they asked the question of, kind of where do we go from here, and what happens, now, can you give us some historical context, because you were living in Cleveland at that time, what happened? And he said something that was so profound to me. He says, we're still dealing from the aftermath of those riots, from the
Mhm.
60s, because you have, there are people that, ultimately, end up wanting to leave, right? They go to wherever they go. They flee to the suburbs, or they go to another city and they leave. And what's left behind is the decay in the community. You have businesses and people that deem that it's not safe. They don't want to invest, right? Into those communities. And it's sad. And again, I'll say this, right? That I understand that, windows can be replaced, and I understand that, cars can be, replaced. They make cars every day right here in Cleveland. There's a Ford plant here, right?
To make
There's a
more.
Chrysler plant out in Twinsburg. I mean, they make them out, they churn them out every day. But my point is that, I tried to look past the immediate and immediately think about the future and where do we go from here. And then I also look at, for me too, it's, we've gone through hell these last 2-3 months dealing with this COVID crisis, with businesses being shut down, with 30 million people, plus out of work. My own company that I work for had to lay people off, back in early April. Luckily, I was one that, I'm still working, but, but I still feel it. And I thought about my niece who works at a Boost Mobile store in the inner city. And I had said to my brother, I go, what would have happened if she'd been in the store and they'd started to loot and ransack that place? Now, luckily, her manager was smart enough to say, lock everything up, get the hell out of there and go home. But I said, even if they had come in there afterwards and they destroyed all of that, I said, now guess what? She doesn't have a job to go to. She doesn't have, she can't pay her rent. She can't pay her car note. She can't buy food now, so then what happens? There's a ripple effect to all of this, and that's kind of what I want people to realize. I know there's a lot of people, and my own brother is kind of like, he's made the statement publicly on Facebook that, the looting and everything, this is reparations for people that didn't, get their 40 acres and a mule. And we exchanged our rules, our thoughts on that. But we were raised by the same parents that taught us you don't steal, you work hard for a living. There's there's more pain that comes out, and I think that that the message that we're trying to speak, because it's gone worldwide now. I mean, we can look in Germany, in London, all over the world, in New Zealand, right? They're doing these protests everywhere. I think that speaks volumes. I don't even remember the last time we had anything like this. I mean, everybody on this call I know was living back in '92, right, where the LA riots happened after Rodney King, right, and they torched LA then, right? But I mean, this has gone international now, which is really incredible, and I think hopefully that that people pay attention to that piece. But again, people have to live after this, even with the COVID-19 situation where there were people that were on both sides of do we open, do we not open, people still have to live. We're not all going to be here forever, right? But while we are here, we want to try to be able to make a difference. We do want to have some kind of quality of life. And, ultimately, I know, we all want the same things. We all want to live in safe neighborhoods. We want our kids to be able to go and get a decent education, and we want to be able to make something of our lives. And that level is different for all of us. You know what I mean? I don't think everybody wants to be a millionaire or a billionaire. You know, I live a fairly, even at my age and with what I do, I live a comfortable life. If all of a sudden, if I came into a lot of money, would that be great? Sure. And hopefully I can help other people with that. But, you know, everybody just has different ways of thinking about this. But I think, you know, trying not to veer so much off the subject, but I think, you know, this needs to be addressed. I am glad that finally, and I will say this, and you know, I have, I have supported, right, Donald Trump's administration. I'm very vocal about that. I have been, but in this moment, these last few days, I've had some pause with some of the tweets, and with some of the tone and tenor. And I am glad that he did speak tonight, you know, to the nation. I know there are going to be people that will, you know, say it doesn't matter. You know, I think it does matter. I think that, you know, our leaders, whether they be our mayors, our governors, the president, you know, the guy who's the head of your block club. I mean, everybody needs to be able to speak out on this. You know, my hope is that what we get out of this is that people really do come together and realize that we are human beings first, that we all have feelings, that we all have minds and thoughts, and that we really think about where do we want to go as a, you know, as a nation and as a country. And there's a lot of healing. I mean, like I said, you know, the colonizers have been here for 400 years, right? I mean, people that look like me and Damien have been on this continent for 400 years now. And, you know, while there's been incremental progress, there's still a lot more to go. My prayers are that when we're all dead and gone, that generations from now, they're still not dealing with this level of, you know, that's the thing I was thinking about earlier. 400 years from now, is it going to be something else? You know, people just have to realize we're people first, you know, and we can't, you know, this idea of, you know, looking at people, prejudging people by the way they look, by the way they talk, you know, I mean, it has to stop.
Yeah,
I mean, I even,
it's an
yeah,
I can just jump in there.
yeah,
I think that is an outdated, outmoded means of interaction with people.
yeah,
I think we need to move past that. And I think I want to jump back to something you said a second ago about how this is going to Germany. This is kind of going global,
yeah,
that there are different protests. We don't need to be able to speak German, Russian, Italian,
right,
or Spanish.
right,
But I think we can all understand the universal language of abuse. And I
yeah,
think anybody with eyes to see saw that that was abuse in Minneapolis. I saw a nation united in condemnation of that awful act. And then, of course, you know, it got dark, and then all sorts of things started the domino
yeah,
effect in all these major cities. It felt very coordinated. There's a whole, we can talk about that in a little bit, but I think there's a universal language of abuse. And I
yeah,
think we've had it. Police take an extra oath. They take an extra sense of responsibility to shoulder. I don't hate all police. I hate some. I've had some bad interactions with some that had Napoleon complex, that just wanted to, you could just sense it radiating off of
yeah,
them. They just wanted to crack a couple skulls that night.
yeah,
And we've all probably had our own experiences with bad police.
yeah,
I just hope being able to see abuse and calling it out. I want to narrow the focus back to police abuse and focus to what we can define, what we can see, and what we can prosecute. I think there's some issues with third-degree murder versus first-degree.
yeah,
Frankly, I would like to see the guy strung up in the middle of the public square and hanged in front of the general public to see, hey, if you do that, this is what happens to you. You have an extra special obligation to protect, not to go out terrorizing the community. But if I could bounce over to Damien for a second. Damien, what was your experience throughout this? It's been a week now. I had a chance to talk in pre-production with Chris and with James, but I missed out on talking with you beforehand.
My fault. I was out
No
walking
worries.
my. So if I can ask, you know, just everyone, you know, a couple of questions, because, you know, James had mentioned something that, you know, is very profound. I mean, I think that when you look at I think personally, one of the challenges that we have is that American history has largely omitted the contributions of people of color. And I think that it's a systemic, there is systemic, I believe that there's systemic racism in this country. And I think that for me, I feel like it's reached the boiling point because, when, people were brought up Rodney King, you can bring up, you can bring up, Mr. Floyd, you can bring up even Trayvon Martin, and there's a host. And I think that when you look at Black people in America, we are a culture of statistics. If you look at COVID, for example, it's one of these things where they talk about how it's disproportionately, different in areas of Black and brown people. And it's a statistic where we make up 13% of the total population in the US. But when you look at COVID, we make up, in some states, 70% of the cases. And I also think that, in terms of, of Black Lives Matter and All Lives Matter, I think that in my opinion, what has to be understood is, of course, all lives matter. I believe that. But I think that when people are talking about specifically Black Lives Matter, I think that what they're talking about is the systemic and some of the economical prejudices that have happened. And I agree with James that, that hopefully we do things to make this world a better place. I feel like that, in terms of, 1619 in Jamestown, I think it even goes further than that, because I think, and when you look at, those people who cling onto the Constitution, cool, but that same Constitution says that I, as a Black man, is 3/5 of a man, for example. And when you look at the civil rights, people forget that it's not a law, it's an act, which still has to be voted on. And when you see things separate but equal, that those are the type of things I think that to your point, that's part of the pain that we still have, because it just seems like, look, everybody wants a fair America, right? No doubt, right? But let's say you fill out an application. Not only do they break down like what your ethnicity is, but they break it down into a subculture. Are you white Hispanic? Are you Black Hispanic? Are you Black? Are you African American? And so, it's one of those things where I think that these are reminders of the inequality in our country.
Yeah.
And
you bring up, if I can interject, you bring up an interesting point too, because it made me think of my wife a little bit, right? And even how we view race in America versus other countries, right? So I've traveled internationally. My wife is an Armenian immigrant from Ukraine.
Wow.
And so we've always joked about it. And she says, everywhere I go, I'm a foreigner. She says, my people were originally in Turkey, we were in Armenia, then in Georgia, now Ukraine, and now I'm here in the United States. She says, everywhere I've been, I'm like the other, right? And she explained to me, she says, in Ukraine, she says, I understand how it is here. She says, because in Ukraine, I would be the Black person, right? Because in Ukraine, you're dealing with people, blonde hair, blue eyes, and she's dark featured and, darker skin, olive tone skin, right? And it's funny because I'll never forget the first time she asked me about what white privilege was, because she heard this term and she'd never heard it before. And I did my best job trying to explain it. And she goes, we laughed a little bit. She says, when do I get to start using this? We had a laugh about it, right? And I go, I guess you just do. It's interesting because me walking down the street with her, people just see a Black guy with what they perceive as just a white woman, right? Until she opens her mouth and then they hear a Russian accent. Then it's like, oh, where are you from? Where are you from? I have friends who are Hispanic, right? I used to work with a young man whose family is from El Salvador, and he says, in El Salvador, he says someone of my color would be considered white, right? So it goes across all all cultures, right? And Damien, you even know this, I'm certain you do, even with amongst Black people. There's lighter skinned Black people, there's darker skinned Black people, right? There's always this kind of like a notion of, I guess, the other, or that lighter or wider is better.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
there's always
Yeah,
lights.
there's a great documentary by a woman that actually is from Cleveland. It came out in 2017, and it was called, if I remember the title, I believe it was called Black Enough or Not Black Enough. And
Yep.
Vanessa Williams,
Yeah.
Henry Louis Gates is in it.
Was there a girl singing in it? Wasn't there like a young girl at the end?
Yeah.
And it was this, if I remember right, not to cut you off, it was the plight of suburban Blacks.
Yes, basically. Absolutely. Yeah.
It was the plight of suburban Blacks.
Yeah.
And, while
we're talking about the suburban Blacks real quick, who's white, Chris Sanders or myself? While we're talking about lighter skin and darker skin. Chris, are you more tan than me right now? You're looking I don't know. I'm just trying to figure this out.
Well, have y'all seen School Days by Spike Lee? It's a whole musical about light-skinned Blacks and dark-skinned Blacks.
Yeah.
This ain't new. None of this is new.
It's not. I mean, I know for a fact, myself being of fairer skin, and there's people lighter than me. Trust me, I got relatives that, as we would say, could pass, right? Pass for white, I've got a great aunt who's 93 years old. This is my grandmother's oldest sister. She's 93 years old. And I'll never forget when I was in high school, I was with one of my best friends, and I ran into her in the mall. And I went over, gave her a hug and kiss. We talked for a few minutes. And then I come back to my friend. He says, "Who's that little white lady you were talking to?" I said, "That was my great aunt. That's my grandmother's sister." And he says, "That's your grandmother's sister?" I said, "Yeah." And he had seen my grandmother. My grandmother was like light bright and almost white. You know what I mean? But it was, it's interesting, these things and how people, perceive things. But I know for me, I know for a fact that myself being of a fairer skin, and speaking as I do, which that's whole nother topic we could probably have a whole nother show on, right? Yes, that people perceive me differently than they would someone else who is of a darker complexion, right? I mean, something hit me just 2 weeks ago, and I almost fell out of my chair. I was talking to a gentleman. I'd sent an email from work, and in my email signature at work, I have my pictures in it, And the guy says when he finally called me back, we were talking, he chuckles and he says, "Man, you sound different than what your picture looks like." And I was like, "Excuse me?" And he says, "Well, you sound different." And I said, I don't quite follow you. Now I followed him. Right.
Funny like
but I said, I don't, I said, "I don't quite follow you." He said, and then he chuckles again. He says, "Well, you sound like a white guy." Right. And I'm thinking, well, what did you expect me to sound like? I mean, it's things like those, right? And this guy, again, is chuckling and thinking it's like no big deal, but it's stuff like that really takes you back, and you have to think like, what the hell is going on? Those are the kind of, it's funny that these last couple of days, I've seen a lot of stories about people talking about, not the overt racism, but the covert racism, And that was something that right there was like, just blew my mind. I would never in a million years, a person, black, white, green, purple, whatever, say anything about the way that they speak as though that equates them, their manner of speech, with someone of any particular race or color or ethnicity or anything. I mean, that just blew my mind.
And things that blew your mind, and I'll get right back to you, Damien, then we'll bounce to Chris.
Sure,
I just want to say, speaking of blowing your mind, I just got a message pop up here on the screen. It says, "A gift from Zoom." It says, "Running out of time? We've removed the 40-minute time limit on your group meeting." So, so I'm going to click love it. I love it now. So if any of you need to go, we're coming up on the 40 minutes. If any of you need to go, no worries. I'm enjoying this. I feel like I could do a week or one of these a day. But I'm down to
keep going.
By the way, I want to let you know that Zoom is going to let us keep doing this, and I hope it's recording appropriately as it's showing me in the top left corner. But I wanted to update you on all that, because Christopher was always the consummate, the epitome of a producer, was always just kind of walking me through, making sure I don't screw this up today. But I wanted to give you that update, by the way.
So, okay, you just wasted 300 minutes with the update, but thanks.
Yes.
That's what I thought too.
So I want to veer off. I want to go to Christopher and then go back to Damien, because Damien has, I don't know if you have a list of questions, but I want to get into the questions, but I want to get to Christopher before we do. Chris,
Yeah.
I mean, when you were out there, did you say you were kind of, you felt compelled to maybe go as a bodyguard to kind of just protect your friends that were going? Did you feel a lot of love out there? It was a lot of people united. The people, because you said that you didn't see violence, but you did see a lot of graffiti and property damage. What was the vibe like on the streets? Obviously, you started showing when tear gas and rubber bullets started hitting the crowd. Walk me through what it was like being out there when it all started popping, if you could, because that's an experience I didn't get a chance to participate in, and it's all part of this picture. And I'm very particular to that part of the world. I spent 15 years in Los Angeles. I took it personally, seeing so much damage out there, but also knowing there was a lot of love and a lot of respect and people marching for equality and civil rights. So what can you expand on that a little bit, your experience there?
Well, first, I just want to say that, like, my black friends don't need me as a bodyguard, right? They don't need me as a chaperone to go to a protest. But I don't know, the people I went with, I mean, I am a little older. I was just scared for them because they're the ones I feel are going to be targeted. Mm-hmm. And there's actually evidence of various videos of, you know, this is the whole thing, is the cops are less likely to fuck with me. Can we curse on this? Cops are less likely to mess with me.
You just did.
You want to talk about statistics and stuff. You know, part of what happened was at the end of the night, we went through Park La Brea, right? We cut through Park La Brea to get to where we needed to go, which is a gated community. The great irony is I saw no fights, no violence, except for two old white dudes fighting each other at the end of the night. All these narratives of all the violence, all this kind, not a single fight except two old white dudes. But like the thing is, me going with my black friend through Park La Brea, unfortunately, because the world we live in, it's going to be more than likely she's not going to be seen as a threat, as a thief. You know, like Damien, you were very generous. You're very generous in saying that you believe there is systemic racism. One thing I want to kind of dial all this back to, like, why has this happened? It seems really obvious to me why this has happened. And one of my frustrations is, I'm seeing a lot of white people talk about this and saying things. You know, I brought this up to someone I saw online, someone we know, Brian, where this girl's saying, you know, well, you know, black people kill cops sometimes, and until all black people stop doing that, like, y'all aren't a monolith. Yeah. Y'all aren't all like, all the black people don't call each other each day and organize what you're going to do. You know, and are we going to stop killing people or not? What the fuck? What do you mean until all? And so.
But there is Black Twitter, and I still don't understand Black Twitter, but there's a thing called Black Twitter. Well, I don't know what happens in Black Twitter, but I haven't been invited.
All right, well, we will have another show dedicated to that, and I will be your conduit. Trust me.
Yeah. I'm in. You know what? It's Scottish Twitter too, but we're going to get on something else here. Look, I want to talk about systemic racism, and I want to talk about white privilege. Now, Brian and I are never going to be able to talk about systemic racism except from, like, historical aspect, because we're never going to experience. But when you say you believe there is, I disagree with you, because I know there is, because there's laws, you know, and my friend is saying, like, yeah, people need to realize that evil doesn't have a color. And I'm like, dude, we're not talking about some philosophical thing about human evil. We're talking about people who have lived under a system that has laws stacked against them. And Brian, our parents, our grandparents we do not have the generational trauma and oppression of slavery, Jim Crow, redlining, segregation. Our parents lived during segregation. It's not some thing in the distant past that we've all just kind of got over now. These are generations of laws and systems designed to not have us be equal. Equal rights means we both have the same privileges. And this is the whole thing. When white people get off about, like, oh, well, I don't have any privileges. No, like, this is the thing. Like, white privilege is kind of a new term. Yeah. I knew what white privilege was. When I was a kid and I go into the 7-Eleven to get some candy, and there's a black kid there doing the same thing, and the shop owners looked at him like a thief. They looked at me like I'm normal. And I can't tell you what black people experience, but I listen to them and they say, this is what we experience. And I see it with my own eyes. See it with my own eyes. And that is just one example of me being a child, growing up in Texas, and noticing that I get treated differently than the black people. And that is just one example. But like all those things I told you, these were laws as part of our system. It's not some fabrication. It's not some philosophical thing. These were laws. And we are still seeing the effects of systemic racism. And part of that is a culture of where cops feel they can get away with killing black people. Like straight up. And that's what this is all about.
And I've been a major proponent after Ferguson of body cameras mandatory on police, that they cannot pause, they cannot mute, they cannot turn off. You don't get paid. You don't start your shift until it logs on. You don't clock out until someone else turns that off. Whatever the system is, to protect the innocent cops against false accusations and to protect the citizens against abuse. The body camera is something we can all do. I thought we agreed on that after Ferguson. But once again, I didn't see all of the footage yet. But I hope there's some common sense things we can do to try to protect everybody as if we were equal. And we'll find out how it works. We'll find out if these changes that are being implemented throughout the country are going to make a difference. The Rodney King situation turned cataclysmic because somebody had one of those massive cameras from 1992 and they caught it from across the way and we were able to see it. Thank God somebody was filming that in Minneapolis a week ago, but I wish the person filming would have taken 7 steps and given a shoulder blast to knock the cop off and spur a whole bunch of other stuff. I wish somebody would have jumped in to stop that, including those other officers standing around. But we got it on film. It always needs to be on film. We need to protect the situation from any perspective. That thin blue line and protecting your own and that those, I hope to God those days are over, because it's not just a few bad apples. I mean, the one guy killed somebody in Minneapolis, but those other cops stood there watching it minute after minute after minute, and it made no damn sense. Damien, let me bounce back to you real quick about the initial reason that we spurred this conversation today was, first off, I was thinking about it yesterday, and I'm like, I need to reach out to James. I need to reach out to Damien. Where are my token black friend? And by token, you guys are some of the most outspoken people I know, and you're willing to play tennis with me. We've played tennis on issue after issue, and we've gotten bent out of shape more than once, but it's okay because we bring it back home. We bring it back home to some place of respect. Even if we don't get it, we're trying to understand and work our way through. But Damien sent me a text. He said, I have a couple questions I think you might have the answer for, or I hope you might have the answer for. And I want to make sure we address that, because that was kind of the initial thing that brought this show together. And I want to give you the floor for a second, Damien, because I'm appreciating that the four of us are talking about this. And I want to get the full scope of your questions, of your feelings, of your experiences.
Sure. So, again, as I alluded to earlier in the show, I do think that this is really how, you start the conversation. And as you noted, some of these conversations have been very spirited and debated. So, for those, I have a few questions. So one is, do you feel that in some ways America is hypocritical? And so James had mentioned, about, his wife's ethnicity. So if you walk it back, like Chris was saying, for example, we have an iconic thing in our country, right? The Statue of Liberty, and you hear stories of people who, came, from all over because, they came to America because they wanted a better way of life. Mm-hmm. I was called a race baiter because I mentioned the fact that I don't know any of my white friends who get up every morning and go to yoga or drive to work or, catch public transportation and ever have to worry about losing their life. And So my question, one of my questions, and I ask about the hypocritical part, is because when you look at whether it's Brian Engelman or James or, you know, anybody, at some point in time, people came from somewhere and
Sure.
they migrated to America, right? And so when people say things like, I saw something where one of the people in Trump's administration doesn't believe that we have systemic racism. So when you think about like your wife, for example, James, you know, maybe not her, maybe not even her parents, but like, you know, her origins, they started, you know, in Turkey, and they fled for whatever reasons, but they came to America. So
Yeah.
do you feel that, you know, for those people that say that, you know, that racism doesn't exist, or white supremacy is a hoax, do you feel that they're, you know, that's hypocritical? Because if we didn't have the Statue of Liberty, I would understand that. But, you know, that's one of the things, again, that, you know, America's known for is, you know, is for people from all walks of life to come here and make something of themselves. And there's, you know, millions of stories of people doing that.
Sure.
So that's my, you know, that's kind of my first question. Part A of that question is, you know, Brian and I had a healthy debate about white privilege. And so given the climate now, do you still feel that it doesn't exist?
There is, I'll address the white privilege part, I guess, first, because that just comes right to mind. I think that, you know, we all have our own perspectives on things, and our whole, my brother, I want to take a step back. My brother taught me one thing actually in life, that something I never forgot, that our entire life experience and who we are, what our makeup is, comes down to what he likes to call the 3 E's, right? Which is education, exposure, and experience, right? And that's really kind of like shapes our world and our worldview a lot. Um, and experience obviously is a big piece of that. And so um, I probably would even go as far as to say that um, sure, there's definitely some privilege at play, but all of us on some level, right? Whether it be because of how we look, or maybe how we speak, or our education, or whatever, have some level of privilege. I mean, I know the fact that, you know, I'm college educated, and that you know, that I may have an advantage, let's just say, over someone that isn't. Um, I've never gone into a room, or I've never, for example, gotten a job just because, at least to my knowledge, right, of the way I look. In most cases, you know, even my current job, you know, and granted, right, there are things that are at play that, you know, nobody can see me. Like if you do a phone interview, this is all you hear is just this
Right.
voice. And if you're looking at a resume, you see James Bates. I realize that my name is about as white as it can be, right? Very Anglo-Saxon. Bates is an English last name. James is, you know, a very common name. Yeah, very common, right? You know what I mean? If you Google James Bates, matter of fact, Google James Bates, you probably have to go 2 or 3 pages deep before you find a black one, right? So if you were trying to even find me, right, you can't. But my brother, his name is Tierney, Tierrney. And if you Google him, the first page of results, if you look at images, you'll see him. You'll see he's a black man, right? And I often think about that too, of you know, as it comes to you know, thoughts of privilege, and maybe what he may have experienced even in his own life with having a, dare I say, different name. I won't even say ethnic, because I don't think tyranny even is so ethnic per se. It's just different. I know a white girl named Tyranny, you know, that's a friend of mine. So um, it, privilege does exist. It definitely does exist. And I think that that for white folks, there are spaces and there are places in this world where they are that they're probably just oblivious to their whiteness, if you will. You know, I know very quickly when I walk into a room um, that I am one of a few, right? And that I may stand out, you know, and that I do obviously stand out in a crowd. And you guys all laugh at this because I'm a Black Republican. It's even more so. Right? It's even more so right there. But but
Okay, Kanye. All right, Kanye.
but yeah, but you know, I'd be lying to you guys if I said that I don't walk into these white spaces with the weight of, you know, 40 million people on my shoulder. And every room I go in, I feel like, you know, I got to represent for me and mine, right? People that look like me, to try to change the narrative.
Wow.
And to try to show them that, you know, we're not all thugs, we're not all criminals, you know, we're not what you see in the media, you know, we're not what you saw on TV this weekend, you know. I mean, my brother has his doctorate. My brother has 4 degrees, four, a bachelor's, a master's, 2 masters, right? He's got a master's in education. He's got a master's in a master's of business administration, an MBA, and a PhD in education. You know, he's Dr. Bates, and I make sure that I tell him. I make sure I tell everybody my brother's a doctor, right? He's Dr. Bates, Dr. Tierney Bates, and I make sure that I don't even call him by his first name anymore. I just call him Doctor. I call him Dr. Tierney, Dr. T. You know, because he earned that. That was something that my grandmother has been dead since 2001. My grandmother died 5 days after 9/11. And before she had passed away, you know, this was some time before she passed away, when he graduated with his bachelor's, my grandmother says, I want you to promise me one thing. I want you to promise me you go all the way and get that PhD. And he did. And when he got it 2 years ago, I mean, we were just all, you know, we were celebrating. I mean, my brother was the first college educated person in our family. You know, I mean, my parents both had a high school education. My father was fortunate enough to be a small business owner and to start his own business, which is what helped to support our family, you know, for all the years, and gave us a leg up in this world. They wanted better for us as their children, and you know, we want better, right, for the next generation. But yeah, Damien, you know, white privilege definitely, it's there, it exists, it does. The thing is I think there are a lot of people that don't realize it, because I've gone back and forth on this issue, and I've even argued the fact that no, it doesn't. And the reason I said that previously, I'll say this, is because I think, from my perspective and from my experience, I never felt that that, and I'll even speak from my privilege, right, of being an educated Black man, right, well-spoken, articulate, as they like to say, right, that I'm that I am at an advantage, and because of that, perhaps I've been blind to see other people's privilege or how that affects other people. Now, one thing I don't do, though, that I try my hardest not to do, is to look down upon or to think less than of other people. You know, if anything, I try to, you know, be fair. I try, even when I engage in social media, for example, I try not to turn to, you know, name calling, or, you know, because I think we all have ideas that need to be shared, just like what we're doing right now. You know what I mean? I think something like this is extremely productive. And I think conversations like this, right, need to continue in these weeks and these days and these months and these years to come. But even more than just talking about it, right, we need to spring into action. Now I grew up, you know, on the east side of Cleveland. I went to Shaker Heights High School, which, by the way, they vandalized over the weekend as well. Crazy. But it's funny, because now all of a sudden I've seen all, like, my, you know, white liberal friends who want to read White Fragility, and they want to read all these books and everything. And I think that's great that they want to, like, learn more and understand more. But pick up the phone. I'm going to tell you something that happened to me right before this call. few hours before this call that meant a lot to me. A girl I used to work with, and she lives in Canada, messaged me through Facebook and just said, I just want to check on you. And she's a biracial girl, right? Full disclosure. She said, I just want to check on you and make sure you're okay. Because I know there's a lot going on there in America. I've seen the pictures and everything, and I know it's crazy and all, but I just want to make sure you're okay. And then I know in one of my posts, because I've made a lot of little posts in here these last few days, one thing I suggested to people is call the Black people you do know and make sure they're okay. Because a lot of people are dealing with a lot of stuff right now. And even like for me, I mean, at work today, I had some coworkers that I had a former coworker that called me on my business line today, again, just to check on me. How you doing? And those things mean a lot. And it meant a lot to me that they thought enough of me to make sure that I was okay. Listen, I'm snugging a bug. I'm here with you guys tonight, and I'm not fearing for my safety or anything tonight. But that meant a lot. So I would suggest to people to reach out. I mean, like Chris, like you said, you went to stand in solidarity, right, with your Black friends. I think that those are the things that we need to do so we can have a better understanding. And don't be afraid. I think we have to get out of, everybody needs to get out of their silos. Everybody needs to get out of their safe spaces, get uncomfortable with what is uncomfortable. It's interesting because the stereotypes, the negativity, the bad stuff you kind of see in the media, all that stuff is perpetuated. But it's really funny how I've had conversations with people who, let's just say politically, I am diametrically opposed to, but at the end of the day, we're still friends. We still can talk. They joke with me about me and my Trump stuff. I joke with them and their Joe Biden stuff, but we have fun. But we're still friends because deep down inside, we all still have a heart. We all still have feelings, and we need to just start, I think, again, treating people like human beings first and foremost. Because I've had people even that I've known for 20, 25 years. I'm going back, people I knew in high school that, and it's funny, Chris, right? Like you said at the top of the show, how people who are Trump supporters will come and attack you. And I feel like I'm on the other end of the stick because I grew up in a place, and I currently live in a place that's extremely liberal. And my voice and my conservative values and my conservative principles are all but extinguished, right? So, I've got to, stand up for my beliefs. A girl I went to high school with and actually used to work with mentioned something that I saw tonight on Facebook, and she says, I know, because my brother and I were kind of sparring about something, and she says, the one thing I respect about James is that he does stick to his guns, and he's principled, but I'm not hardline either, because I do realize that people have feelings, and I try to understand where people are coming from their perspective as well too. I think there is middle ground. I think we can meet somewhere, hopefully in the middle, and break bread. But again, like, we all want the same, kinds of things in life. We don't want the same thing, right? I'll clarify. We don't want the same thing, but we want the same things, if that makes sense, right? Somebody else might want the big house on the hill and the Mercedes Benz, and somebody else might be just happy with their little, maybe 2 or 3 bedroom house with a Chevy in the driveway, right? And then there's somebody who, guess what? They've been riding public transportation for years, and they finally just got their first car, and it might be 5, 6, 7, 10 years old, but they busted their ass, right, to get it. I think a lot about my father, who was born in 1932. He just passed away almost 2 years ago. And I mean, he grew up through the Great Depression, through civil rights, moved to Cleveland in 1954, in the early 70s, established, his own little business. After he got tired, as he told me, I got tired of working for the white man. And you know why? And you know why he did? You know what? You know what the impetus was for him leaving his job that he had was that he was passed over for a promotion for a white guy. So I know white privilege does exist, you know, and he would tell that story, and that's what turned him into an entrepreneur. And then he had his businesses for many years. That's what put me through Catholic school and paid for college and all that stuff, you know. So,
Yeah.
you know, again, I think we want, you know, we all just want to be, you know, somewhere where we're safe, where we're sound, and we can make it better for ourselves and for our kids.
Right.
You know, I'm tired of. I do get tired. I really do get tired of the back and forth and everything, and of the browbeating and the, you know, the name calling and all of that stuff. You know, it takes a toll on you, and what we've seen, yeah, and what we've seen happen this past week. I just hope that people really take a couple of steps back, kind of look at where they are, reach out to other people, and you know, let's kind of try to come together and figure all this stuff out. You know, we all still got to live in this world.
Yeah.
You know.
Chris, do you want to come in here?
Yeah, I just, you know,
Yeah.
because I want to kind of talk about why is all this stuff happening, all these sort of things.
Yeah.
We're talking about white privilege here, and basically white privilege means I don't get murdered while jogging.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I've seen people, and this is the thing, and this is the big problem in a lot of these like people that are woefully ignorant of all these things. I mean, the thing is, you James, talk about that we want this, you want this society where we're all equal and we're all humans first. That's what we all want, right? But the thing is, there's this fear of black people. I mean, I'm going to use two examples, right?
Yeah.
First of all, I hear this whole argument that the man who Aubrey, right?
Oh,
yeah, Ahmaud Arbery. Yeah.
Their excuse is that he was like poking around some sort of like house that was being constructed. And that means you get to kill somebody? What a dumb excuse. What a bunch of bullshit. Yeah. And the thing is, I do shit like that all the time. I don't get killed. I don't have hillbillies roll on me. And then I hear, well, and they roll on him with guns. And this is an issue I have with a lot of people that are like super pro-gun, which I'm not anti-gun, but I'm like the whole idea of like having a gun, right, means you get to defend yourself when someone tries to kill you, right?
Yeah.
Their excuse is they roll on him with guns, and I can't tell you how this feels, but like, how are you as a black man jogging and two hillbillies roll on you with guns, and they go, oh, well, he attacked them, he defended himself. They roll on him with guns, and then when he defended himself, then they killed him. This dude is dead, and he went jogging, and these two white dudes are using the excuse that he looked around a construction site, and that's the whole thing. If they had seen me, they would have thought 2 seconds about it. And this dials back to this whole fear thing. We're talking about names here, right? Yeah. I have a friend who tells me a story. He's a writer. He got paid to go to Korea, right? And he didn't have a picture of himself on his profile, right? His name's Wallace, right? His name's Wallace. He doesn't go by that. He goes by his middle name. But he remembered when he's talking to the Koreans about, there was this kind of weirdness about it. And he got to the place where he's meeting them, right? And the woman that meets him, like looks at him relieved. And the first thing she says to him, she's like, oh, are you Wallace? And he says, yeah. She goes, whoo, like we were scared that you were black. Not like we were wondering if you were black.
Wow.
They were worried. They were scared by a name that they associate with black people. And these guys that murdered this black man that was jogging were scared of what? Well, he walked up to a construction site and looked at it and then kept jogging. And that is why this shit's going on. And this is why Black Lives Matters are saying our lives matter. They're not saying fuck other lives. They're not, this isn't, people are acting like this is a racial thing. I go, no, they're saying we just don't want to die for being black. That's all they're saying, right? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but like, you don't want to die going jogging. You don't want to go to Korea and have people scared of you because you're black.
And it's sad too, because, you know, something I was looking at, and I think I touched on it just slightly a little earlier in the conversation, talking about even like amongst Black people, right? Like, you know, we're all different shades, right? From light, bright, almost white to, you know, darkest of the dark. And it's sad that it seems like that the darker you are, right? It almost seems like the more targeted you are, because one of the things that stood out to me is there was something I saw. It was a montage of the photos of the men and women that have been affected by the police violence, right? Killed by the police. And one thing that I noticed was most of them, not all, but most of them were darker. Most of them were darker. There was like there were probably very few that were maybe my color or lighter, you know, and that again, I mean, it's like it's
Well, that's an observation you had, and
yeah,
thinking, and maybe you haven't figured it out yet, but Chris,
yeah,
going back, you know, Chris and I have known each other for a long time now, out in Los Angeles and Hollywood, and putting things together. But there's this classical archetype. There's a
yeah,
classical archetype of the knight in white shining armor, and then there's
yeah,
that dark, sinister character, and
yep,
it's white, you know, darkness versus light. It's, you
yep,
know, white
it
versus
is.
black, and there is an archetype, and I don't know how far back we can take this.
Right.
It is a thing.
Black Monday.
It's a thing.
Recurring thing.
You could think about Black Monday. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
Black Monday. You know, and Chris, and well, really everybody. I have a you know, just a couple of things with Mr. Arbery. I think that there was additional footage that showed that there were young kids. You know, there were families that were also looking at this same construction site, and I think
Yeah.
that, you know, one of the awful things is that what I don't understand about that case, and obviously with you know, with the most recent one, is the missing concept of intent, because those guys with Mr. Arbery, they had already had him targeted. You know what I mean? They had a communal group chat, you know, that basically was saying, you know, this guy is breaking in, you know, he's breaking in houses, you know. And back to one of Brian's earlier points about, and everyone's really about policing, is that, you know, these guys were given kind of the Wyatt Earp treatment. You know what I mean? Like, since your friends are in law enforcement, you de
Yeah.
facto got, you know, you guys, you know, if you kill them, you know, we'll, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so, you know, I think that it's one of those things where I'll share my experience, what I went through yesterday. So much like Chris said, I went to, you know, a rally, and I mean, I would say there was about 45,000 people there. I mean, it was massive. It was massive. I mean, you saw every.
Hold on, where was this again? Where was this
Boston.
at?
This was Boston.
Where are you at now? Because I see you all over. You're like Philly, you're Cleveland, you're out here with Santa Monica watching a Cavs game with me. Where are you now again?
Yeah, so I live in Boston.
Okay.
And so, you know, I went there, and my son and I went there, but he went with his friends, and I went there just to kind of see things. And so I'm there, and there's all this beautiful unity and everything, and you know, cops engaging with people, and it was just something different when it got dark. There were a couple of things that really struck me, and Chris, I would love to know, you know, if you saw this, where the police were standing in parade rest, and they were literally allowing people to loot. Now, this isn't something I saw on TV. This is something I witnessed with my own eyes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And as a matter of fact, I'm on the news here in Boston, but I'll get to that later. But so they were letting people loot, and there were people who were coming up to people, and they were saying, "Hey, can you tell me where the Gucci store is?" Or, "Hey, can you tell me where the bank is?" Now, for those that have never been to Boston, I will give a Cleveland analogy, because they're almost similar. Like, Cleveland's more spread out, but Boston is more dense.
Real tight. Yeah.
So it would be the equivalent of, you know, people asking you, you know, hey, where can you get, you know, where's the Gucci store at, or where's the Louis Vuitton store? So everybody knows that all that shit is in Beechwood, right?
Right,
So,
right.
you know, it's they're not
Yeah.
from.
Exactly.
It's on Melrose. Go to Melrose if you want those $1,200 Jordans. They're
Well,
on
that's
Melrose.
my
Go
point.
watch that.
Right. Yeah.
So it's the equivalent of someone asking, you know, where is the Fred Perry store, you know, on Melrose or whatever. And so, you know, I was talking with people and they were like, yo, like, there are some people that are paying relatives, like, let's say, Brian, you lived in LA for 15 years, but, you know, we have Cleveland ties. So it would be like if you had a cousin, or better yet, if you said, James, you know what, this COVID shit fucked up my business. I was looking at my business insurance. It says that I'll get $3 million if my shit just magically gets destroyed. So what a lot of people were saying was that they were flying in or bringing in their, you know, people that they knew and their relatives to purposely loot their properties or their businesses so they could get. One of the other things too is that
I hadn't even thought of that one. Wow, that's like wow.
No, they were talking about that on Adam Carolla today. They were talking about the insurance industry, and they were talking about the people who've been out of work for 3 months. The government shut their stores down because Carolla's still on the West Coast in LA. Had a chance to interview him a couple of years ago. It was awesome. But yeah, he was saying, talking with Mark Garagos and talking about all the riots in general, and saying, you know, this is a windfall. This is manna from heaven for business owners that were shut down for 3 months now. If they can just have a riot or some sort of act of God destroy their whole place, they can cash in their insurance check, back out of their deal, walk away, and save their ass.
Yeah.
That's interesting you brought that up. I hadn't
even thought about that. You're right.
But and so, you know, again, that was a topic among, you know, many people in you know, at night, because it was so weird. It was so beautiful, so peaceful. And then literally when nightfall hit, it was, I mean, this is what happened. So my son called me and was like, Dad, can you pick me up? They're looting. And when I got down there, there was someone had got ran over. Someone got ran over.
Wow.
And, the sad thing about it is, listen, I never will condone violence or looting and all that stuff. What I tell people, and this is why I was called a race baiter, was because I said, you know, I don't think my white friends can understand. Like what I've told people, how I described all of this is a pressure cooker that has been simmering for 400 plus years. And finally the lid blew off.
Just blew off,
It blew off. And so, you know, anyhow, when I was down there, there were some kids who had a cinder block. They had cinder blocks and they were going to throw them through a window. And I said, listen, you know, what are you doing? You know, you are diluting like the cause, you know? And they were like, well, there's no more peace and this, that, and the other. And now, to be fair, I had a bias because I'm in my 40s and these guys are talking, you know, they're 16, 17 years old or whatever. And they're talking about peace. So I'm like, what do you know about peace? I'm like, listen, your voice is more valuable.
Sure.
If you go to jail, you're not doing anything.
Yeah.
And so, you know, and then, you know, they're like, yo, motherfucker, I'll throw this cinder block through your windshield. And I'm like, all right, do that if you want to. You will get folded up like Japanese origami, you know.
You're going to give them the J.R. Smith treatment, huh?
Yeah.
Now, that was pretty cool. We should talk about that J.R. Smith thing a little bit later.
For sure.
So some reporters saw me deflect, you know, them, you know, throwing a brick through a window, and I got interviewed. But it's just one of these things where
I wish there were more people like you, Damien. I wish more people were. Go ahead.
Let me. This is what I wanted to say. So as Brian knows, like Brian alluded to, that, you know, I'm pretty outspoken when it comes to these things because I have an interesting story, you know, that, you know, one day I'll tell on this show. But
to remind everybody, we are from the same hometown.
Yeah.
It's
And
what, 90 what percent black, or it's about 0%.
So
Your family was one of the only families first.
So Chris, to put it in a historical perspective, my family was the first set of Negroes that came to Brunswick in 1981. And we dealt with real, I mean, like, that's I guess that's kind of my point. So what I was going to say was, I was called a race baiter because people were saying that I keep alluding to the past. And that, in essence, is my own personal definition of white privilege. When you feel that, you know what, that you, like, if you don't learn and you're not reminded of the past, you can't move forward, right? And at least in my opinion.
Yeah.
And so it's
That's
one of
valid.
the things, I'm like, listen, you guys are talking about the past. Every other fucking post I see is somebody posting, half of, a couple sentences of Malcolm X or Dr. Martin Luther King or Frederick Douglass or Sojourner Truth. So don't, who are you to tell me about my path? Like, I had a past in Brunswick, where my sister, and I, or my sister, we would be walking to the bus stop, and you would have people that would get up in the morning, while most motherfuckers get up and they drink coffee and they eat their Legos and, whatever else. There were people who made it a point every day to take clumps of raw ground beef and flick it at my sister and I, because we were considered animals.
Oh,
There
wow.
were times where we would be standing and, waiting to get on the bus, and we would feel something wet behind us, and it was someone that had taken ketchup packets and had put it on us, and we were like, what the fuck, do they think we're burnt hot dog? You know what I mean?
Wow.
But really what ended up being was that, if anybody knows about skunks, how do you get the scent off? You use ketchup.
Yeah.
And there were times, like in school, like Brian knows this, so there are 5 guys that I'm best friends with to this day. And I had a scenario where I was in kindergarten, tied my shoe, went to the bathroom, wasn't paying attention to where my head was. And all of a sudden there was this loud bang. And I'm like, oh, so there were 5 white kids that had followed me into the bathroom, and they were going to try to beat the black off the crayon. So then there were 4 other guys that came into the bathroom. Now, bear in mind, this isn't when we're teenagers or adults.
Yeah.
We were little shits,
kids.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so those guys defended me. So when people say, well, I'm sick and tired of you, referring to the past, that tells me everything I need to know, because if you don't understand, for example, that when you're reading history books, in elementary school, I mean, I can use the most basic example, Thanksgiving. For the longest time, we were taught that Thanksgiving was this melancholy event where the Pilgrims and the Indians, they
shared a nice meal with the Indians, right? Yeah, we just
kumbaya and had
Yep.
cranberry juice and all this stuff. And then as you get out here in the real world and you start talking to Indians, and they're like, nah, it didn't go down like that, bro.
Then you learn about like the Trail of Tears and those kind of things, and you're like, oh wow.
And for me, it's one of those things where, again, I think to Chris's point, when you talk about Black Lives Matter, I think it's an encapsulation of our culture. I tell people all the time, Black people, we're the only ones that give our culture away for free. Yeah. We do. And so for me, I was, I had to reflect on that, because someone, like I said, up until recently, when I said stuff like, I don't condone the violence, but you have to understand the anger and where it's coming from. Because you know what, when you're when you remove all of the energy out of what's going on, and you look at the fact that it is taken videotapes for us for people to say, wow, maybe there is, some inequality. That says a lot. When you look at the fact that our past shows that when we peacefully protested, it wasn't, the judges who were racist, or not physically racist. It's always been law enforcement. Look at any picture from the civil rights. You will see, police officers hosing down women, sicking dogs, shooting bullets, throwing tear gas. And so until there is, reckoning is probably not the right word, but until there is a systemic cleaning of law enforcement where there's no bad apples, or or when people of color can walk into Beechwood Mall and go into the Louis Vuitton store and not have security follow them around. Like, I think that these things are still going to happen. And one more thing I'll add is that if you didn't know any better, and you guys can agree, chime in, whatever, but you would think that with respect to Mr. Floyd, that there's all this going on because there was a verdict. So my point is that the more that we tear shit up, and again, I'm not a legal person, but I feel like the higher the percentage of these guys getting off, because what it's going to show is that there's nowhere in America that they're going to get a fair trial.
Yeah. I'm looking out the window right now because things are popping off here.
Wow.
Lots of cars.
Not in Culver City. What's going on?
I'm going to try to dial this back to kind of like what's going on now. Because we can sit here and talk about all the problems y'all as Black people have been experiencing. We could do this forever, right? I kind of want, if you don't mind, I just kind of want to talk about what's happening right now, though, right? So, like, we've got the National Guard here, right? Mm-hmm. We have
the military.
Military, yeah. And this is messed up. And honestly, I think this is called agree to disagree, and we're all being very nice to each other right now. My understanding is James and Damien have sort of a polar political affiliations or whatever. I'm an independent, like that's something I mentioned to Brian, is it really bugs me, is that you criticize Trump. The first narrative they go to is, oh, you're just a libtard. You're just all this. Actually, you don't know. You don't know what I can't criticize the president I could be a Republican and criticize the president. Why not?
Absolutely.
But
look at George Conway.
Right. Yeah.
The Lincoln Project.
Exactly. Like, my whole thing is like, people patted themselves on the back for voting for Obama, and I'm like, I voted for a Black woman in 2008. By the way, you know what I mean? Just FYI, if you want me to kind of one up you now,
right?
You are. But I didn't vote for her because she was Black or a woman. Right. I voted for her because I want something different than this broken ass. But this is kind of what I want to know from you guys. And this is something I'm kind of ribbing Brian about. This is the thing. When Bush was president, all the Democrats, whoever, whatever, were afraid. Oh, we're gonna have martial law. We're gonna be put in camps. All this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And when Obama comes as president, all my Republican friends, oh, Obama's gonna put us in camps, and we're gonna have martial law, and he's gonna tear down the Constitution, all this sort of stuff. Well, and the thing is, when Trump got elected, I posted, exactly what I'm saying now. Mm-hmm. Martial law, camps, all this sort of stuff. This is me, November 2016. And I go, so now Trump's president, third time's a charm. I mean, it is. It is. So this is what I want to know from James. You say you're Trump's, right? Mm-hmm. So I mean, how do you feel about this? How do you feel about this game show host that got elected president and martial law now? We have the National Guard coming in. We have all these massive restrictions. We have him wanting to shut down any sort of criticism of him. And I could back all this stuff up with his own actual quotes. I'm not just making stuff up here, but we don't have time for that. I kind of want to know, though. I kind of want to know from all you people that were afraid that I'm not making this assumption.
Sure.
You James, but I sure as
when you say you people, Chris.
I'm saying you people.
I'm just kidding.
Is good, and it's somehow he's like anti-globalist. He's gonna tear down. He's an outsider. Oh boy. Well, we're getting martial law. We're getting massive restrictions. We're getting a surveillance state. We're all getting under him. All these fears from all the past. Now it's here. So is this surveillance state? Is this martial law? Is all this stuff fighting the globalists, or what is it? What's the narrative now that all these fears of massive government, right? Massive government coming down on us are reality. Y'all tell me.
I think that in the situation that we're under now, like the here and now, what we've seen this past weekend and this past week, if you will, at some point law and order does have to be restored. Societies are built off of law and order. If we don't have law and order, what we have is anarchy. What we'll have is we'll have the looting that will continue, right? And 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 and, and the interesting thing is for those who would, for example, um, you know, go along with, everything that has happened, right? I saw something that kind of made the light bulb go off to me earlier. It's kind of like, if something bad happens, who are you going to call? Who are you going to call? I mean, are you? It's supposed to be the police, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, there has to be some kind of law and order, or do we do this? Do we do like, I don't know where this was. I just saw a video clip of some sheriff in some town somewhere in America that basically was encouraging like people that were doing looting and doing all this stuff to please stop it. Don't try to come to wherever they were. I don't know where that was, but he says, you know what? He says, I just remember him saying, I think it was like Polk County, right? I think there's
Florida.
Was that Florida? Is that where it was? Right.
Florida.
And he says, there's people here with guns, right? And he was basically giving a warning, like, if you come here and try to cause trouble here, there's going to be people that push back. And do we want that kind of thing to happen? Do we want it to get to that where all of a sudden, guess what? All the people that do have guns, because I'll tell you something, full disclosure, I do not own a firearm, right? I am pro Second Amendment, but I do not own a firearm myself, right? But I can tell you this, I know people, I've got a coworker of mine that has an entire arsenal, and he looks like me, right? It's not a white guy. So even the stereotype of it's just these, the hillbillies with the guns and all that stuff, and the stuff you saw at the state capitals a couple of weeks ago, people protested. No. There are groups that are organized that are black people that are gun owners, right? I know several of them. Yeah, absolutely.
I agree.
Yeah. But I guess to get back to your point though is there has to be some semblance of law and order. Trump has always talked as, I'll just use the term as a tough guy, right? As the tough guy. And I think that's where he is, as far as his tone and tenor, is different from Obama, for example. And I only use Obama because that's the last president we had, right? You could even argue that he's been more tougher even than George Bush, if you want to make a Republican, comparison or whatever, I always still kind of laugh at George Bush's "I'm the decider in chief" comment. I'm the decider, right? But at some point though, I think there has to be a message that is felt that, listen, this is serious stuff and we got to get stuff back to order. Because I don't want to have to be able to, I don't think any of us on this call want to have to walk outside of our doors to look to the left and right to see if there are people coming our way to, potentially damage our property or to do more stuff. Literally right here in Cleveland, you know what they're doing here in Cleveland? So you folks that are familiar with Cleveland, Beechwood, Avon, all those, Woodmere, right? All those areas, the suburbs, you know what they're doing now? They're boarding up the stores in anticipation that something else could pop off in the suburbs. Because I think, I was shocked when I saw it. I go, who the hell is going all the way out to Beechwood? And then I thought, wait a minute, that's where Saks Avenue is. That's where Nordstrom's is. So I'm like you said, Damien, right? I'm like, if they're going to loot and get the good stuff, that's where they're going to want to go. And listen, people got cars, or they'll get there on foot, or they'll get there somehow. If they really want to go there, they will go there. I just think that, I listened to his speech that he gave tonight during the evening news. And, it was, the tone was tough, it's something that it is a message though that has to be sent. And the only thing that I'm conflicted with, honestly, if I'm being really honest about it, is the fact that we're already dealing with, the overreach, if you will, of a police state, right? I don't think that we need more violence, right? I think that people need to heed because what I fear the most is the fact that people don't listen, or people don't heed the warning, and then now we have this clash, and now we're looking at Civil War II going on here, pretty much. You know what I mean? And it's but keep in mind, I mean, if we go back to the Second Amendment, right? Those that have the arms, that do have the arms, right? Well-regulated militia, and to fight against a tyrannical government. So the police, if that's looked at as the government, if people want to decide that we could really have some bad shit on our hands, and I think he wanted to send the tone of, we don't want that to happen. I sincerely believe rather, that he wants this to quell, he wants this to calm down. I mean, I read an article where I guess they had to take him down in the bunker, right? Because they're protesting outside the White House.
I watched those flyers at the White House.
Yeah.
I saw no less than 50 incidents that should have gotten these people arrested over and over. I mean, it was.
And they got
the Secret Service have been injured, skull fractures, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, and I'm
why
sure
they're not taking the most violent people out of that,
right?
Because they are ruining what Chris did.
Right.
Chris went
and
was showing solidarity, trying to end police abuse and discrimination and racism. But you have these outside agitators that Damien was yelling at, like, "Hey, bro, don't do that. Don't." It's like you said, James. You said you walk into a room and you feel responsibility to be an example of awesomeness, right? To combat all of the negativity and all the stereotypes and the shared history from those people's experience. This is a long-going, many hundred-year issue. But when you walk into a place and feel that burden and feel the need to represent your people, you felt that.
Yeah.
Me coming from the same place Damien did, it was 99.9% white. We had a couple of black families in our 2,000-person high school, probably more by the time I got there in 97. You were a year or two older than me, obviously. But, through elementary school, like Geron, Geron, like we played baseball together. That was my black friend. We played baseball. Like, I don't know. Kids don't know any better. But leaving that sheltered Midwest Ohio, suburban, mostly white existence, at some point after college, I thought it was a good idea to go to Los Angeles. I went to, well, according to my cable company, it was South Central Los Angeles. And I went, oh my God, really? I'd watch the Rocky
South
King
Central.
I'd heard that phrase.
South
I like
Central.
Snoop Dogg. I'm down with some of this stuff, but not like that. But I went into a black neighborhood. When I went to Buffalo Wild Wings to watch my Cleveland Browns get their ass kicked all the time, always hoping this was the year we wouldn't, I would walk in and feel it instantly. The eyes on me. I was the white guy in the room. I moved into my neighborhood. It was me and the crazy guy with the boombox that would walk down the streets.
I love to hear story. I love to hear stories like these. You know why? Because like my white friends that also have these kind of stories, I go, that's me like just about every other day.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Burden, for generational burden. Yeah. Like for people of color, that's a generational burden.
Yeah. And I feel, and here's the thing too, like I feel very comfortable whether I would be in a room where it was all black people or all white people or mixed or whatever. I mean, I've always been I've always, tried to be very welcoming and accepting of everybody. My own family is like the United Nations. I mean, I've got, my cousins that live there in LA. I mean, they're half Filipino, and I feel like they claim the Filipino part more than they do the black part.
Sometimes the food is better. I'm just saying.
It really is. I'm not gonna lie to you. It's pretty good. When I was in LA a year and a half ago, it was really good. But I think, back to what Chris was asking me, I think that that there has to be, we have to have some kind of order at the end of the day. I mean, stuff has to go has to be in order, because without order, then we just have anarchy. And I don't think anybody wants that, because then guess what? We're just going to be stuck in our four walls from now to the end of the eternity. And it was really nice for me, the holiday weekend, last weekend, to actually go to not one, not two, but three, believe it or not, three restaurants, and just kind of try to feel some sense of like normalcy. I was expecting to go in and seeing, plexiglass walls and everything. And to be honest with you, it was nothing like that. It was, the waiters and waitresses had masks and gloves on, but it was a regular dining experience. Tables might have been, spread apart a little bit further, but that was it. That's the only thing that looked different. But we have to have some sense of order, because, and here's the interesting thing too, right, is that the white folks that live in the suburbs, the reason that they're boarding out those stores and that stuff, because they don't want that stuff to come there. They don't want the violence to go to their neighborhoods. I wish, Brian, I'll tell you something. I wish there's something I've been thinking about these last couple of days. I wish that there's a part of me that wishes that more white people would move into
inner cities,
black neighborhoods and inner cities, and not just to gentrify it, right? Because that becomes an issue, right? But to really come and try to be a part of the community and learn, and not to take over, right?
My neighborhood. Go ahead, Damien.
No, I was just going to say. So again, so let me just address Chris's question. So for me, for me, I've never liked Trump, and it has nothing to do with his presidency. I just think that when you look at his history, where there goes back to people of color wanting to, live in his apartments or whatever, and having, him having people put, the circle red C for colored and, and their gender. And actually, I've called out some people I know that now they hate Trump, and I'm like, well, wait. Back in the 90s in hip hop, when everybody was like, I want to have big butts like Donald Trump, or, staying in the Trump for weeks, you were all about him. So for me, I just feel like what encapsulates him is the fact that he's very make America great again, right? Which in the context of this entire conversation, you have to look at the fact that he's a 70-year-old white man. So when you look at make America great again, that means different things to different people, right?
That's true. You're right. I'll go along with you there.
And also when he was talking about, improving America, the economy and all these things, he didn't do that in Cleveland, Ohio or Los Angeles. He went to Davos, Switzerland to say America is open for business. So, I mean, again, he's a gray area president. And what I mean is that you never know where he stands. Like with Charlottesville, for example, a white woman got killed, which ironically, no one really talks about in the context of what's going on now, right?
Heather Heyer.
Yeah, and yet he was saying that there were good and bad people on both sides. So again, it's one of those things where, again, if you are a person of color and where he accepted money from David Duke, and it took him, it took people that were Black Republicans and all other types of people to get him to say, listen, I did it, I won't do it again. And I just think that you have to have transparency when you're president of the free world. Like, you can't have gray areas because, like you said, James, before, people don't listen. So people, again, you had teachers in Iowa, dressing up as Mexicans and having their walls shaped like border bricks. You have pictures of kids doing the, what's now the white supremacy sign and MAGA hats, and having, their brothers, their brother and their siblings in blackface. You know what I mean? So to me, these are the things that
he doesn't call it out. He doesn't call it out.
He doesn't call it out. And so it's one of those things where, again, Chris, you would agree, right? That I'm sure you've seen these banners at these protests. They're saying that, white silence is guilt. So when you have that, and I don't know, like I said, I just feel like, back to what James had mentioned about, whites moving into black. again, that's one of the things that kind of encompasses Black Lives Matter, because again, if you have blacks that move into white neighborhoods, some whites fear that their property value is going to go down. But black people, black and brown people, are supposed to be okay.
It does.
Like, well,
it does, and that's
well, it does. It does. But then, like, black people, brown people are supposed to be okay with whites moving into Harlem, you know, and having to just deal with it, you know, or DC, or even, you know, Detroit. So I
so
just
my
feel
neighborhood. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, for me, and I have to say that I lean more independent, because again, I live very close to DC, and you know, pick a news outlet, you know, you'll see, you know, someone from Fox saying that, you know, that blacks need to vote Republican because the Democrats have taken, you know, advantage of their vote for 50, 60 years. And then you see, you know, someone on MSNBC saying, well, you know, Republicans are just flat out racist. Well, when the cameras are off, you see them at Jack in the Box ordering, you know, a Monster Burger together, talking about, you know, whatever. So to me, they're wings of the same bird. And so I don't know. I feel like, I don't know. I think that we're in a very interesting time in America, because again, I think you know, to Chris's point, a lot of stuff that's happened to people of color, whether it be, you know, what's going on now with Mr. Floyd, or I've seen white people sending, you know, pictures of Kaepernick saying we should have listened. I've seen a lot of that on social media. I don't know. Like, for me, I feel like in the midst of the chaos, that my hope is that, like James said, you know, that there are real conversations. You know, I have a lot of white friends in the suburbs that say, listen, you know, it's not appropriate to say that my silence means that I'm racist, because in truth, I don't know how to have that conversation, because there's such a fear that I might say the wrong thing. You know, and so it's just, I think that, to your point, James, earlier, is that we have to get over all of that and just have a discussion, because if we don't, what we're seeing now is only going to get worse.
Well, I was just going to add, my neighborhood in Los Angeles was very known in 1992. I believe it was a Fedco, and now it's a different store, you know, down the street. You know, this was shown on TV, pushing the carts down the street with the big screen TVs. This was a big riot center. This was the Fedco, the famous footage of shopping carts pushing, you know, remember those 1992 big screen TVs that were, you know, you couldn't even fit it on your car like a Flintstones rack of ribs or something. But, you know, I moved into that neighborhood just because it was the only place I could, air quote, afford. And I diligently for 15 years, you know, spent time walking that community, trying to fix with the landscaper, fixing problem. Here, let's fix that tree. You got to cut this down. You got to paint this. Here, that curb is broken. So joining the board to try to help the neighborhood fix this, paint that, remove that, replace this, repair that. And I'll never forget going down 4 or 5 buildings. And I just remember this lady came on. She has some of her own issues, but it got into a loud verbal altercation with me. And I just stopped. I said, look, I'm not going to sit here and be sworn at. I don't know what your issue is, but we're going to go. And I said, I'm here to find things that are broken and damaged and fix them and make them better. This became the quote that I've lived with since it happened. I just remember, this is the ghetto Brian. I've never been called Brian, but she this is the ghetto Brian. And that I wasn't welcome there making things nice. They wanted, she said that she was telling me she was speaking for them. I don't know if she was or not, but this was the altercation. She was a black lady. I am not a black lady. And she said, this is the ghetto Brian, that we want it this way. Don't fix it. We don't want it fixed. And I said, well, I'm your neighbor and I'm a part of this HOA and I want it fixed. And nobody's opinion trumps anybody else's. But I'm trying to do good things for all of us, to fix all of the things in the community. Not for me, for all of the people. And this was an HOA that almost went bankrupt in 2007 with the financial crash. Wow. I felt very not wanted in my neighborhood. I felt very on the outside. call it gentrification, call it racism, because I'm one of those people that doesn't believe racism is only white people against others. I think it's any sort of prejudice or bias against any sort of other race. I felt some garbage. I won't even go down the list of other things that I've gotten into, but I think we've all had stories where we felt out of place, unwanted, less than human, and definitely threatened. We can go down that road either.
Sure.
I'm sure James and Chris and Damien, you guys have all been threatened and felt uncomfortable in your skin, in your home, in your neighborhood. And all I've tried to do is make things better. Damien, you said about, talking to those young bloods with the cinder blocks. 1999, I went out to New York. I'm a music fan. I went to this big concert called Woodstock '99. And if you remember this in 1999, it was awesome. It was 3 days of awesomeness and great concerts. And on day three, there was a group, PAX, a Political Action Committee. I forget what they were. They were handing out thousands of candles. So they handed out thousands of candles, and then everything started to burn. It culminated. They were tearing down all of the fencing, all the scaffolding, all the plywood, lighting it on fire. It turned into a riot. We're talking about 600,000 people in Rome, New York, at a former Air Force base. Ooh. And I just remember trying to evacuate. Red Hot Chili Peppers are playing up on the main stage. They covered Jimi Hendrix, Let Me Stand Next to Your Fire. Now, it's interesting because they were covering that before that happened. But as they played Let Me Stand Next to Your Fire, I was in the 600,000 person mass riot. And I remember leaving, trying to get my girlfriend and my young brother. I was, what was I? I was 20 years old. My brother was 17 or something. Getting my girlfriend, and I was just off a knee surgery, and I have to protect her. I got to protect my brother. And I remember yelling at these people. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? It got so violent. It got so dangerous. I got really uncomfortable. We had to evacuate the show. That was the last band on the last day, so there wasn't much we were missing. But, I remember being in that moment as well, completely out of your element, caught in a riptide. There was a wrestler just got caught in the riptide in Venice Beach or something like that.
Yeah, Gasper.
Yeah, it was awful. And when you get caught in something that's way bigger and way more powerful from yourself, you're a leaf floating on the breeze. Whatever you want to do, you are at the mercy of the mob, of the crowd. And I remember that as vividly as I remember that near stampede after the shooting at the Jack Casino on the Cleveland Cavaliers parade. And I think there's probably 2 points I want to make here. Number one, I go back to one of the first things that I did with the New American Media back in 2000. I don't remember 2011. It was shortly after we started. And I remember there was an incident in California where a guy got beaten to death by the cops. And it wasn't a knee on the neck where it was, I can't breathe, get off me, I can't breathe. And then he stops talking and it's over. And you watch it and it's horrific. This one was Kelly Thomas with batons. The cops put on latex gloves before they beat him to death, and you could see the pool of blood growing as he's calling out for his father, crying for his dad, as they beat him to fucking death. I went on Coast to Coast AM talking to millions of people the day that all of those officers got acquitted. This was a Latino cop, somebody else. It was a white guy, a homeless guy. This cop, Campion or Ramos, I'm trying to remember the guy's name off the top of my head. I could pull it up. He put on his latex gloves so that he could pound and destroy this guy and get blood all over. They let that guy off. So for me, I've been railing against police abuse for a long time. I'm not a black dude, so I haven't felt what you guys have felt. But as a white dude who kind of gets a little, I get a little confused when we get to the definition phase of things like racism. We know what it is, but how do we actually define it? I know that we can identify what police abuse is. I don't know, like we said earlier, James.
Yeah.
Whether we speak Russian or Romanian or
right.
Whatever language, I think we know what abuse looks like. And I think when we end up going down this circular conversation of race and racism and it's open season on black men, and it just, the story perpetuates itself and it starts to gain steam, and then there's no way out of the hamster wheel. It's just spinning.
And then
But when I see police abuse, we know a police abuse. We know how we can laser pinpoint that is abuse. So my question back to you guys, because we've talked about it and talked about systemic racism. So to bounce the question back to you guys, this isn't pre-Jim Crow. This isn't Emancipation Proclamation. This is 2020. When we have been able to prove that somebody committed abuse of power, police abuse, for example, let's talk about Minneapolis. He's been arrested. He's charged with murder. Systemically, what hasn't happened that should have happened? I saw a murder, just like I think, not to put words in your mouth, but I believe the three of you saw a murder happen on camera, and it was sickening.
Well, I would say
I saw that too. So he got arrested, and he's facing charges for murder. Mm-hmm. Was that not supposed to happen? Should something more have happened?
Yes.
Because I feel like if we're talking systemically, a murder was identified and a murderer is being prosecuted. To me, I don't see what happened incorrectly. So I'll toss it back to you guys. What's wrong about prosecuting a murderer for murder that shows a systemic problem with police abuse? That's the part I'm a little unclear on.
So if I can chime in, I think that I think that from the time that the initial video hit to now, there have been tremendous updates. It's been noted that these two guys have history. They worked at the same bar, and even the bartender has come out and said, hey, this guy, he had he was a little, he had an edge to him. And so I would like to know, at what point does intent, when does that start to come around? Because it's kind of like, I don't know, I guess, for me, intent. And also the other videos that have come out where they show the other cops on both sides of the police car beating him up, so to me, I mean, I think I understand why they did the third degree murder, second degree manslaughter, because you can always charge up, but you can't charge down. And so
they played it safe, and they didn't want to overplay their hand and end up in a spot where they went for a death penalty. You couldn't prove it. Now you let them walk. I get that too. I get that too. And I will grant you, the fact that they might have worked, is this complete, not fake news? We've confirmed this because I've seen the reports, some reporting.
Yeah, no, true.
Hands down, fact.
It's down, yes.
Because I saw that too. And yes, that's where you go. It reminds me of that, was that in Texas where that lady cop went downstairs and killed that black guy?
Yeah, and said that she was in the
wrong apartment. They were dating or something. You're like, all right, bullshit.
Listen, I live in an apartment building right now, and my suite number is 411. Have I gotten off at the third floor before? Yeah, that's happened, right? Because maybe I hit number 3 instead of number 4 on the elevator. But when I get off, I look because there's a freaking sign right there that says Suite 311's that way, and I know, I'm on the third floor. It happened to me just the other day. I went down to go check the mail, and coming back up, there was a girl on the elevator with me. I think I hit my button, she hit her button. She goes to the third floor, and I got to walk off, and then I realized, oh, wait a minute, no.
All right, so you're saying, to make a 311 joke, you got all mixed up?
Yes.
Okay.
But I realized I'm on the wrong floor. I get back on the elevator. And let me tell you, I mean, I'm not one that necessarily stays up, till wee hours of the night anymore. But even if I was coming in at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, I know where the hell I live.
Right. And that changed.
And even if I just moved in a week ago, I still know where I signed the lease, that I'm in suite number 411.
So if they knew each other, that totally changes the story, Damien. Back to what you're saying. Yes.
So let me pose a question, to everyone. So I think, Brian, what you may be getting at, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, and Chris, and everyone, please feel free to correct me. But, when we're talking about, police brutality, again, I think one of the things that we overlook is the scenario in Baltimore. And the only reason why I bring that up is because, there was, they were rioting in Baltimore and looting and stuff like that. But I think that one of the elephants in the room was that 4 of those 6 officers were Black.
Was this Baltimore back in Freddie Gray?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And but then you had scenarios where Baltimore cops were they were seeing with their own body cam planning drugs on people. So it's one of those things where, again, as I mentioned, when you look at, when I say systemic, again, when you look at the history of, the relationships between minorities and police, it's been one where there's been abhorrent violence. And even subsets of that, like with George Zimmerman and Brian, you and I, we had a healthy debate about this. Mm-hmm. To me, what I never understood is, let's suppose, Brian, you saw a killing, and you call 911, or you see something suspicious, and you call 911, and as the operator is getting your information, she's sending police to your location or wherever you are. If you say no, they always get away. Doesn't that imply that he had already had him pegged for whatever it was, and there was going to be some type of confrontation regardless?
Well, our neighborhood got ravaged with methamphetamine addicts, a couple buildings down, and it was for about 2 years. And they always got away. They would get arrested. They would attack the police with hammers, get arrested. Oh. They would dump them back on our streets a day and a half later. And nobody was protecting us. And here I was, the evil white guy in the Black neighborhood, trying to get these arsonists. They were lighting buildings on fire. They were lighting vehicles on fire. They were stealing everything not nailed down. They were breaking and entering into homes. No help was given to this community. Yeah, I've lived in this where it's like they always get away. They keep doing it. Yeah, and it was this was a Latino guy and a Filipino girl and a Black dude, and it was a mix. It was a United Colors of Benetton ad, but it was crime. All it was crime. It was all the tagging on the buildings. It was all the gang graffiti. It was the dealing drugs on the corner, and then shots are fired because somebody doesn't want them on that corner. And it was, for the love of God, will you please help us with these 6 fucking assholes that are causing the entire problem for the entire community of elderly, retired, disabled, the children, all these kids, all the people living in this neighborhood just trying to get by, and they would not help us with that fucking house with the meth heads. 2 years of this. I'm telling you, that's part of the biggest reason why I got the fuck out of there. I couldn't take it anymore. Normal people should not have to live under that amount of violence. And we're seeing this in a lot of cities. We're seeing the violence popping off. Now, it might not be as many attacks, although I'm sure you've seen that I don't know, the light-skinned person getting pummeled where he's crumpled into a heap. He looks dead and bloody. I don't know, he had a sword or something trying to defend. The lady in the wheelchair or the push cart with, oh, she has a knife. I would have a knife too. And there is some violence, and there's just tons of property destruction. I know it's not theoretically the violence we're thinking of. It's not punch a Nazi. It's not slitting somebody's throat or a drive-by shooting with a gangbanger. But it is violence. It's destruction. It's wanton, rampant destruction of the neighborhoods, and it is damaging. And it's just, I don't know what to make of how these neighborhoods are supposed to survive when the police, like you said, I think it was actually in Baltimore. Now that you bring it up, I believe that Baltimore mayor said we decided to give them space. What was the exact phrase? We needed to give them space to loot or to damage or to riot or to
express their frustrations, I believe it was.
Something we needed to give them space, whatever the phraseology was, but it was the communities were not being protected or helped. The business owners had not been helped or protected. And they're outnumbered. There's little you can do. I also get that. It gets complex. I don't know what an answer is, but I've seen it from a lot of different angles, and it's awful. It's sad to watch any police abuse case when they don't de-escalate the fucking situation. I was almost thrown down a flight of stairs. I was at my friend's house in, where was it? Marina Del Rey. just west of LA, just west of Culver City where Chris is. And I was at my friend's house. They were having a party, and I was standing out having a drink, and I almost got thrown down a flight of stairs by a massive 6'7", 6'8" black dude cop. I'm like, bro, I'm in flip-flops. I'm not harming anyone. Why are you touching me? Started launching me down a flight of stairs. When I finally got down there, a little Asian cop came up in my face and was breathing on me like one of those horses snorting, slow motion in like a William Wallace movie, something with Braveheart. It's like, and I could feel his breath, and they wanted some sort of altercation from me. They didn't like that I looked up at the stairs and said, hey, stop escalating this, because the police were yelling at the people that were leaving the party and challenging them to come back up here and say it again. I'm sorry, police are not supposed to be like drunken meathead bouncers. They're supposed to de-escalate the fucking situations, and I've been wrapped up in it myself. As a white dude, I think it's a police abuse issue that unites America. I think when we get into the amorphous racism thing, it's hard to define. It's hard.
Brian.
I don't think so.
You find it though, okay? In your whole story about how tough it was in your neighborhood, all this kind of stuff, and you're like, I'm the only white dude there. I can guarantee you that shit wouldn't be going on if it was all white people. You answered your own fucking question there, man.
That's what I was gonna say.
All that shit with all this was allowed to persist because the cops, local authorities didn't give a fuck, because it wasn't a white neighborhood. It was a brown people. You've answered your own question, man, Brian. You're sitting like, why are they letting this shit happen? Do you think that shit happens in Marina Del Rey? You think in Marina Del Rey, in an apartment area, and it's all old Jewish ladies or something, whatever, they would let all these redheads.
This neighborhood used to be a Jewish area. In the 40, 30.
It doesn't matter what it used to be.
Then it turned into a black neighborhood.
You said it yourself. You're the only white guy there. So it's not a white neighborhood. It's a brown neighborhood. So, and you're like, why do they let all this shit persist? Well, there you fucking go, man. I mean, come on.
You're saying the cops didn't care because it was a dark community?
Yes.
And what were you saying, Damien?
No, I was just going to say that that's what I was going to comment basically to, Chris's point, is that, even though, you may have been the only white person in the community, they viewed it, because for all they could have viewed you as, a light-skinned person or, a mixed person, that it's one of those things where it's funny, we talk about policing, but we can all name areas where police don't even go. You know what I mean? It's a weird thing that way,
And they barely got a police department in East Cleveland.
Yeah, and
the black neighborhood.
Let's
be honest. Let's be honest. There's no white neighborhoods where the police don't go. It's black neighborhoods.
So what do we do when the neighborhoods start destroying themselves? What do we do when the cities start erupting in complete destruction? What is a society to do if your family lives there?
Because the other thing, I was going to say something else that comes to mind too for me is, okay, so, there is, I was watching something, it was a news program. They were talking about, some new policing procedures using technology, right, I guess, to be able to kind of target like high crime areas, essentially, right?
Yeah.
And then those areas tend to be, right, the black and brown areas. And so police presence is, let's say, for example, increased or stepped up in those areas. And that also gives the probably, the maybe not intended consequences of it is that there is probably more interaction with law enforcement there as well too. So there's got to be a balance somewhere. You know what I'm saying? Like obviously everybody wants to live in a safe area where they deem it's safe to walk outside or it's safe to walk around the corner, down the street and all, right? And but I kind of like wonder like where is the balance, or should the approach probably be different? I would almost even, there's a part of me that would almost even prefer, instead of, for example, seeing patrol cars rolling around through the neighborhoods, which is probably easier, right? Just because it's a car. Like, to see maybe cops walking the streets, going to people's houses, introducing themselves. I think that kind of community policing might be maybe more effective. I don't know. I'm not in law enforcement. I'm just thinking of ideas.
But
Damien,
James, James, I think the problem is that, I mean, look, you know, again, law enforcement has a very, then it becomes the question, I think, of snitching when you see things happen. You know,
Yeah.
I think that, I think that, I think that, to your point, there has to be both.
Yeah.
I think that, again, I think that you have to have law enforcement that knows their audience, per se.
Yeah.
Like, when you're looking at some of these things that are going on in some of these cities, I feel like sometimes the police are provoking. If you got people, I mean, listen, you're in law enforcement, you're going to have people are very agitated. So people are going to say things. So if you are put in place to police people to make sure that they are exercising their right to free speech, and you know that they don't have weapons, and the first thing that you do is you put your hand on your taser, or you're sitting there going like this with your baton,
That's gonna make people fearful.
I mean, you look at what happened to those 2 college students in Atlanta who got yanked out of their cars. You know what I mean? Like, it's so I think that it's one of those things where, when it comes to policing, to your point, James and Chris, there has to be, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, for me personally, I get tired of the buzzwords like diversity and inclusion, and community policing. I think that it's one of those things where you have to have officers that are willing to embrace the community, and I think that over time those things happen. I think you have to have good cops call out the bad ones. Stop worrying about the blue. What is it? The Band of Brothers and all that stuff, because that's what's tainting things. And lastly, I think that we have to have a real honest conversation about, there's this conception, I think, that people of color love ghetto living. I think that if you talk to real people in the ghetto, they don't like it.
I had one lady yell at me. She loved it. That was my one experience.
But listen, but that's because, and this is going to sound weird saying this, but I think that sometimes it's about the stereotype. It's about the fear. Like, listen, my cousin is Braylon Edwards, got drafted 3rd overall by the Browns in 2005. And we were having a conversation about how, when you say you're from certain places, like Brian, you talked about your cable, right? If you were to come across, a Black person who said, you know what, I'm off Rosecrans, there's a certain element of fear, or, or I used to live off Kinsman Ave, like, or I'm from Detroit.
Yeah, so, are you red bandana or blue bandana?
Right.
So I think that there has to be, I don't know. I mean, I hear people when, as Chris talked about with Black Lives Matter and stuff like that, people are always so quick to point out, well, in Chicago or in East Cleveland, there's black on black crime. But for me, I think that the narrative should change to, okay, well, we live in a country that, for all of its freedoms and everything else, it's easier to get a gun than it is an education. And so we have to, I just feel like that police have to understand, they have to understand their value. And I think that once that happens, I think, to your point, James, I think that you will find people that, that go back to doing beat patrol or foot patrol, and, in the community meetings where you have, your local police person to, sit and be able to ask, and answer tough questions. But again, until you're able to be in an environment where, when people see police, they don't, they're not asking the questions of, am I going to lose my life tonight? Because that's a real, I don't think that white people understand that that's not just some folklore. It's a real thing. Like, I was telling people about the incident in New York City. And, you know, some of my white friends were like, well, why was that such a big deal? So I was like, okay, let's go down, you know, Black history, you know, let's go down a path of Black history. So I said, so there was a town in between Ocala, Florida and Gainesville that was Rosewood, Florida. And I said, the story goes that there was a white woman who was married to her white sheriff. Well, the sheriff was letting his friends like have relations with his wife for a better term. One day she snapped. She realized that she couldn't go to the sheriff because of obvious reasons. So who did she blame? Who did she blame? She blamed the slave that they had had in their family for 20 years. And the white people in the entire community, they burnt up everything Black, you know. And for those that couldn't escape, I mean, they, you know, they paid the ultimate price. And the damage was so bad that the town doesn't even exist. You have to Google it, you know what I mean, to learn the history. And so when you look at that, you know, it's one of those things where she was okay saying that there was a guy threatening me, but if you watch, when she got on the phone and the cops answered, she didn't just say a man was threatening me, she said an African-American male was threatening me. So there has to be this, again, systemic racism. It has to end not only in society, but it has to end also in, you know, within policing. I mean, to me, what's going on in the nation right now is a larger version of Do the Right Thing, where, you know, where instead of South Korea being in New York, it's in Des Moines, Iowa. I mean, you got white dudes coming out their cars with crossbows in Salt Lake City. You know, so if that doesn't tell you that we have that we need, I don't know, we need better policing. I don't know what does.
I just had the thought, it's just Chicago, 5 to 30 shootings per day. You know, some of these cities are chock full of violence, and there's plenty of police abuse cases we can point at. We can point at Kelly Thomas. We can point at all sorts of cases that hit closest to us or are the most egregious. But we do have problems inside some of these cities that are just, it's awful. There's no reason that a society should tolerate gunning down kids walking to school. And we see it happening in Chicago. We see it happening in Washington, D.C. We see it happening. There's city after city. Now, granted, this is probably mostly, for the most part, better than it was in the 90s with the gangster rap days and the Biggie and Tupac. Like, the stories in my hood, they were shot and their brains were exploding, dead in the streets over and over from the 90s. That wasn't mostly the case these days, but it's still happening. 5 to 30 people every single day in Chicago. But all we fixate on is when we can catch something on camera and go, it's a bad white cop. Told you, it's racism. But there's other violence problems in our city too.
But that's my point, Brian. You can't really say that because Baltimore, if that's the case, then Baltimore was the exception to the rule. And what happened most recently in Atlanta, because those 2 cops were Black. But again, you have to realize that, like, so, you know, I didn't even mention what I do. I work in clinical research, and that's why I travel. You know, I work in oncology and a whole bunch of other therapeutic areas. And Chicago was one of the places that I used to go to, and came across a guy who, I mean, he was a banger, you know, and I said, you know, I just have one question. I said, you know, why are there killings happening for streets, neighborhoods that you don't even own? And he said, I'll be right back. And I'm thinking, like, you know, wait, okay, you know, I don't know what's gonna happen, you know. But he came back to me. He came back to me and he said, you know what? He said, you know what, man? You made me think. Let's have a conversation. So he came to the Hyatt where I was at, and we had a long conversation. And again, you know, when it comes to systemic racism, there's also, and again, James and Chris, maybe, you know, with your Black friends, maybe you guys discuss this too, but there's systemic mental poverty in that, you know, it's like, James, you said that your brother is the doctor and he had 4 degrees. Well, there are some people that feel like, you know what, well, why should I work that hard? You know, because I live in a country that, you know what, if I have more babies, I get more tax money. You know what, if I keep my income at a certain amount, I can live better than those people that are making millions of dollars because I have everything taken care of for
So
me.
does that, so you bring up an interesting point. So does that speak, so that for me speaks more to culture and upbringing than
Yes.
anything, right? Because, you know, uh, listen, I'll never forget an old job I had some years ago. It was a sales job, and there was a girl who, really nice girl. I still know her to this day, but I'll never forget this. She says to me, you know, she got, commission for her sales or whatever. And one day she comes to me, she says, whispers in my ear, she says, James. I said, what's up? And she says, can I ask you for a favor? I said, yeah, I guess so. Sure, what's up? And she says, can I have them put my um, put my commissions in your name? And I said, I'm thinking, why do you want me? Why? Right? Was my question. I'm like, you earned the money. Why would you want? And she says, because I don't want them messing with my Section 8. And I was like, and I said to her, I said, Renetta, I said, what? So are you afraid to make more money because they'll take something away from you? You know what I mean? And it just, I mean, it kind of, I still think about that to this day, and it blows my mind though. I mean, you have people who just, and again, it kind of goes back even to my earlier conversation about people want different things, right? We want the same thing, but we want different things. That just blew my mind, because I mean, I've always been somebody that has always wanted to try to, best of my ability, right? Strive for the next level to get, to get more, but to get it on my own. You know what I mean? Um, I mean, I've been fortunate that I've never had to take any public assistance or anything like that. And hell, I've been out of work, I've been laid off, but my parents always taught me to, like, you prepare for those things. And I understand though that there are some people that don't have people like I had in my life to explain that, those things to them. Um, I go back to, right. We've had a lot of talks about history. You know, you go back to, you know, um, many of the, welfare reform programs that you had during the 60s, where it was, you know, you couldn't have a man in the house, right? Because they take your benefits away, right? I mean, that goes to systemic, right? It does.
That
It
intentional.
does,
Is that
right?
part of the reason why
And was that
a way to destroy
exactly,
the black family?
exactly? So that's something that you could speak on. So now it becomes, so now you have generations of people who have lived off of, public assistance, dependence upon the government for their livelihood. I mean, right now it's really funny, right? Right now, I saw somebody post something about, the a friend of mine. She posted something about, what does it say about, something about, like, what does this say about a society where you can, make more money by not working than working and everything. And I had to remind her, I said, that extra $600 is over July 25th. That money's not going to be there forever. You know what I mean? And it's funny because even, one of my, my company had to make some layoffs, back in early April. And one of my former coworkers, we stayed in touch, and he told me, his unemployment's kicked in. And he goes, I'm doing okay. And this is a guy that's like ex-military. I mean, he used to be a Marine, real smart kid, real smart guy. And he says, right now I'm just kind of, he says, I'm making about as much as I was at work. And, and I said, well, I know you're a smart guy, and I know you're going to land on your feet. I mean, you've got military training, and I mean, you'll be fine. I'm confident of that. And he actually looked at it as a mental break to be able to kind of, like kind of reassess things and recalibrate, which I guess he's looking at the positive in all of it. But, there's a lot of people going around talking about, oh, well, there's people making more money from unemployment and then wanting to go to work and everything. That's a fact for right now. But even here in the state of Ohio, the maximum unemployment is $650 a week. That's the maximum. And that's for somebody that's earning, right, what much more than the average bear, right? So probably the average person, if I had to guess, just is probably, in unemployment benefits might be getting $300, maybe $350, a week. And what the hell can you do with that? I mean, I'll spend that much money in trip. You spend that much in a trip to the grocery store, depending on where you shop.
Pay your cell phone bill, go to Aldi once. All right.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I mean, hell, I got a Heinen's and a Whole Foods up the road here. I do go to Aldi's though. I do go to Aldi. I spread my money around. I do. But but
the Aldi Claw, the Vista
Bay. I saw that when I was in there the other day. Yeah. But I mean, it's it's sad. I mean, but on some level, now here's where my Republican principles are going to come in, right? On some level, you have to want more. Nobody can want more for me than I want for myself. Now I can go and I can talk to like my 15-year-old and 19-year-old nephews, for example, and talk to them about, going to school, getting an education, all the stuff we all heard that probably all our parents told us to do and all, but they have to want it. I remember my mother said to me when I was younger, and that's where I take this from. It's like, I can't want more for you than you want for yourself. And when I was young, and when she told me that, I was kind of, what the hell is she talking about? But now that I'm older, I've been in the workforce for, 20 plus years now. I get it. You know what I mean? Your destiny, and that's kind of what, when people, somebody asked me today on Facebook, is America great? That was the question they posted to me. And I really still think it is. Do we have a lot of work to do? Yes, but we've always had work to do in this country. But I think what is great about this country, at least for me, is that this is probably one of the only places on planet Earth that you could come with nothing and make something out of it. The woman that's sleeping in the other room there is proof of that, right? My wife. When I asked her, when we first met, and I asked her, I said, oh, there's 196 sovereign nations in the world, and you chose America. Why? And she gave me one word answer. She says, freedom. Freedom. And I've never forgotten that, freedom. And the fact that, we have that here, even with all the problems we have, and God knows we have plenty of problems, right? I mean, we're dealing with them right now. But I think there's still hope for America. I think there's still hope for the people that that want to come here, that want to make something out of their lives. There's a reason, with all the flaws we have, right? There's a reason why we have 1 million people from other lands come here every year to make their own little American dream. There's a reason I've got this little flag behind me. There is hope for America. I think there will always be hope for America as long as we are able to continue to push forward and to work for it. But I think, I think we can make it, but it's going to take all of us. But again, not everybody wants the same things. Somebody might be just okay, still collecting Section 8 and doing the bare minimum or whatever just to get by, and that's good. And you know what? I mean, it's not even probably fair to, talk down to that person, because if that's what they want, then who am I to say, you should want better for yourself? I could say that, right? I could say you should want better, but hell, there might be a guy that's makes $1 million a year that's looking at me and saying, you should want better, right? It's all a matter of perspective at the end of the day, right?
It is. You're definitely right about that.
Yeah. And,
yeah.
I tell people, I said, I live a pretty good life. I do. I mean, I'm not a millionaire. I'm not, I'm not the richest guy in the world. But I make a decent living. I make an honest living. I'm able to pay my bills. I don't have to live paycheck to paycheck because I've been there before too. Right. But I do, but everybody has goals in life and striving for something. I think if anything, you could tell younger people or other people is just to have a goal. And I think like like Damien, you had mentioned earlier about, you know, mentally, you know, what you were saying just moments ago about, you know, the mental state of people. You know, you have to, I think goal setting is very important in people's life. Because isn't it funny? You guys ever? I'm sure everybody on this call here has probably asked somebody like, or has been asked, where do you want to be in 5 years, or what do you want to do? Right? Everybody's been there before, and it's really funny how many people you'll ask that question that don't have a clue. They just kind of going through the motions, and a lot of people are just going through the motions. Hell, I have, you know, I have, you know, gone through the motions. There you go. What is life for, right?
Look, my mom got me this, and I'm like,
Yeah.
where will you be 5 years from today?
Yeah,
I should open this up and make a plan.
You should. That's perfect. But you know what I mean? You gotta, and the goal can be whatever you want the goal to be. If the goal is, for example, I want to get a better job, make that your goal. But then you gotta, you know, you gotta make steps. If your goal is I want to buy a house, you gotta make steps. If my goal is I'm tired of riding RTA, I want to have my own car. Right? You got to make baby steps, but people have to be willing to do that. They have to, you know, where there's a will, there's a way, right? We've all heard that before, and you have to have the will. If you have the will, you can get the skill, right?
That is
to do
true.
what you need to achieve. Yeah, that's something I used to teach in my sales courses. If you have the will, you know, if you have the will, somebody can teach you the skill even, right? If you don't know it yourself, to help you get there, because there's people out here that'll help you. And that's another thing too. Don't be afraid to ask for help from people that you know or that you trust, right? To get you out there.
Community and family.
It does. It does. Yeah.
Can I
trying
talk
to
about my
take
5-minute
where
goal?
you live.
Let's talk about my 5-minute goal.
A 5-minute
Yeah.
goal?
I want to eat dinner. Next 5 minutes.
Honestly,
I'm just saying, if I was producer, I would have cut this off a long time ago, because we're all having a good time, but I don't think anyone's tuning in 2 hours deep into this. You know what I mean?
It's been good. It's been cathartic.
Yeah.
You know.
Listen, I'll be honest. You know, for me, I think it's been great because I think that again, when you put people in a room, you never know what's going to happen, and I think that honestly, for me, I appreciate this conversation. I mean, like I said, Brian and I we've had some pretty unique discussions about what we're talking about now. Yeah. But I think to Chris's point, we can talk all day about goals and life starts when you decide to move out of your comfort zone and things like that. But where we are right now as a country requires some serious resolutions, and I think it has to be, like you said, James, it has to be a goal, because again, we're in a place again, so what do we do? What do we do? I mean, I can say now that I think that this is kind of like a scenario where, and Brian alluded to it earlier, where people in Brunswick now have to deal with what's happening, because I've had. If I were to show you how many messages I got, like, hey, let's schedule some time to talk because my kids are asking me questions, about race or why we've never talked about it or whatever else. But I think that we have to have, not just, this thing where we have this kumbaya moment and then, things go back to the way they were.
They were. I agree with you.
Right. And Damien, I think for me, it comes back to the simple fact of, I want to see police de-escalate situations whenever possible. They're not always possible. I mean, the people that they run into on a daily basis, I wouldn't do that job. God bless them. Good Lord. The other things I've seen from, I can't even put into words, awful stuff. But whenever there is a possibility for an out, whenever a police officer, a law enforcement interaction has the potential to de-escalate, that needs to be written in the code that is what they must do. Not that they should, not that they could. Yeah. They must de-escalate. If there is not an active, aggressive situation, John Crawford getting blown away in the Walmart, Tamir Rice with a toy gun, they had harmed no people. No people. Someone called, it looks like they have a gun. It could be fake. I don't know. You don't roll up jump out and in 2.4 seconds or whatever it was with Tamir, you don't just blow someone away and ask questions later. If there is a potential to de-escalate a situation, it is incumbent upon the mayors, the governors, the president, and the police forces to write it into statute, to drill it home with all of the instruction, the training, the battery of you're under immense stress and pressure. And it's almost like that scene in, what was that, Men in Black, where it's like Will Smith comes in, he's like, oh, and then it's he pulls the gun out, but it's just a girl holding an advanced calculus book or something like that. And so it's like, you go, where do you go? You cannot have happy triggers. You cannot have the intuitive instinct to crack some skulls and spill blood on the streets like Kelly Thomas, or to just keep going and, people are filming me, I'm going to just ride this out because screw you. Well, good. He earned himself a murder charge for it. I want to see better training from the police, and I want to see more de-escalation whenever possible. But that's going to require a little bit more cooperation from the general public, not trying to be so argumentative and confrontational in return. But I don't know how that starts. I don't know how that balance begins, but I just want police to de-escalate whenever possible.
Well, again, and Chris, I know you want to eat, so I have this question, and I want everyone to chime in. So, if you were if you were Keith Ellison right now, would you ask for the chief of police to resign from the Minneapolis Police Department? Because again, it's something where this guy, he had a history, and what made me think of this is the cop that killed Tamir Rice, he got a job. He got,
oh my God. Yeah,
he got a job. So Brian, to your point, all of what you're saying sounds nice, but when you have stuff like that, and again, I'll revert to some of the systemic stuff that's happened. It's like, you know what? One of the reasons why there's so much violence happening is because, again, systemically, it's like, you know what? You're absolutely right. In the worst case scenario, you could have tased that kid, if you thought the gun was real. But yet, it was one of those where, there's this police concept where it's the wild, wild west, shoot first and ask questions later. And so, so for Chris, would you ask for the chief of police to resign? Because those 3 officers still haven't been charged. And he went on public TV yesterday, the chief of police, that said that if you're silent, you're complicit. So I just, for me, I would just like to know, your thoughts on that, because again, I think that there's a systemic there is a power, there is an ego with being a cop, and I think that one of the challenges is that, people don't walk into a police office and they have racist stamped on their forehead. Right. It's one of those things where as long as you keep your nose clean, and you align yourself with the quote unquote bad apples, you'll end up, you end up not getting in trouble, or you end up being like in that scenario where, we all have this friend where, when they become, when they drink too much, they become an asshole. And you always preface like, when they have too much to drink, this is how they act. I'm sorry. I think that that's the mentality in law enforcement, and so like I said, I know that Chris wants to, to eat. So I wanted to know what his thoughts are on that.
And then we'll let you go, Chris. You give us your thoughts on that, and then maybe a final word, and we'll let you go, and we can start doing a cascading bounce out of this. And
okay,
if you like. By the way, before you even get going, I appreciate all you guys immensely. Like, we're all tired.
It's been fun.
Frustrated. We're all
I've enjoyed it.
Sad. We're kind of dead inside. This week has been tough. The past 3 months have been tough. A lot of frayed nerves, and we're all kind of on edge. And I think that played a role in this. And like, I forget who said, but this is perhaps a bit of catharsis.
Yeah.
Maybe just a bit. So Chris, thank you for your time. And if you'd like to answer Damien's question, then maybe give us a synopsis to wrap it all up on your way out to dinner, sir.
Well, this is the whole thing. I don't know that much about the chief of police. And from what my understanding, though, it's not his necessarily job to convict these guys, or that's the DA or whatever, right? I don't know. I'm not an expert.
Mm-hmm.
But what I can talk about is, so would I fire him? I mean, was he saying that, but he was saying that people, like he was basically encouraging people not to be complicit. Is that what you're saying?
Well, no. So yesterday, so on CNN, and this was mind blowing to me. So they had, the Floyd family, and Sarah Seidner just happened to be interviewing the chief of police because he actually went to the site where Mr. Floyd was killed.
Mm-hmm.
And so somehow or another, it was noted that the family of Mr. Floyd had not spoken to the police, any of the police in Minneapolis. So this was the first time that they had actually had a conversation. And one of the first question that the brother of George Floyd happened to ask the chief of police is, will you charge those remaining 3 officers? And his immediate response was, their silence is complicit. And so to me, and then it came out again, Sarah Seidner happened to ask the chief of police, okay, well, this guy, he had a total of like 22, whatever you call them, in his file.
Yeah.
And 3 of them were like, I don't know if you want to say they were so bad that they were basically not, they were not even talked about. But
no, he'd already killed people.
Yeah, he had a body count. And so
yeah, he has a body count already.
Because I think that, again, I mean, my question to you, because again, I agree with you. I think that what you did, in terms of, gaining an understanding through, attending a protest, and you understand that, that this is something that has, again, it's woven in the American fabric, and so for me, I feel like personally, I don't know, I feel like in Ferguson, they shook up the whole police department, and they found out that there was like disproportionate, acts of racism within that police force. So
yeah,
I feel like that they're going down that path in Minneapolis. I mean, because again, you're still waiting for Philando Castile, you know what I mean? And so I know, Chris, you want to go. So I just wanted you to, to get your perspective on that.
So my perspective is yes, fire him, top down. What I think should happen with this is what happened with the 92. We have a good example here, actually, in LA with the 92 riots. So what happened there is, from my understanding, I'm not an expert on this, but they fired all the cops, they fired the chief of police, they brought in this new person, and what they did was this new chief went into the neighborhoods and recruited from the neighborhoods, right? They weren't just like recruiting the bullies or whatever. They specifically went after people who are from the areas that they're patrolling and policing, right? They took people that are part of the communities and made them part of the police instead of having like a separate entity, instead of making it the other is policing you, it's like your own people. And that is actually, that model actually, it got a lot better. That model is actually used, from my understanding, once again, across the world as a great way to develop a police force, people from within the communities as part of your police force instead of like the man, you know what I mean? And that made things a lot better. And I actually just want to talk about real quick, because like, are you okay? I just want to talk about power real quick, right? Because Brian was going like, what's the definition of racism, all this kind of stuff. Well, there is a definition. And once again, from my understanding, from listening to my black friends, I mean, there is like a college book kind of definition, right? But it is what is used. And the thing is, anyone can be prejudiced, right? But racism is one race having power and exerting that power over another race, right? Yep. And the whole thing we're talking about kids, the drug problems, the gang problems, all this kind of stuff, that is the result of generations of systemic racism. And Brian, if you're not familiar with redlining, look it up, do some research, there's been generations of power being exerted against Black people through laws.
Yes.
Through legal means, right? Not just like people's attitudes or whatever, we don't like them. Actual laws, actual legislation, actual things that have pushed Black people into inner cities, into poor areas, created systems of conditions to keep them addicted, dependent upon the system. And the thing is, people turn to drugs because it empowers them. People turn to gangs because it empowers them. They don't have power. When they see other societies, other neighborhoods, and they have all this wealth, they have all this power, they have all this access, right? Access to things that Black folk don't have. That is a power that the people with the white privilege have. And it is a lack of power that has been baked into and designed into the system. So like people are grasping for generations for some sort of power because they're not born with it. You know what I mean? So racism is that power exerted over another one. And that's why people say, well, white people can't be racist or Black people can't be racist because they don't have the power of jogging down the street and not getting murdered. See what I'm saying? So that lack of power.
No, and I hear you on that. I just disagree vehemently. I've seen how that definition has changed over the past 30 years. I just disagree with it. I think if anybody of a particular race is ugly to another person of another race, that's racist to me.
That's called prejudice, Brian.
I know what the college professors have done to it over the past 30 years. I just don't buy into it. I think it's ugly, hate-filled racism, and it can come from anywhere. That's my perspective.
But that's called prejudice. There's two different words for this. That's called prejudice.
Yep.
Racism is an ism. It is an exertion of power. See what I'm saying? Like we can say, like if you like judging someone for the color of their skin or whatever, like Damien and James can judge me and be like, oh, that white dude, right? That's a judgment they have.
Or
right?
a bias.
That is a prejudice.
Bias.
That's not racism. Racism is an exertion of power. And when you have the power to redline, when you have the power to create Jim Crow, when you have the power to set up society that is segregated, that is a power that the Black people didn't choose. You know what I mean? They didn't have a choice in the matter, man. They did not have a choice. And that's racism. And I'm going to end off on that. But also, I'm going to end up on this too. We talk about examples of cops working with other. We are seeing, I want to end on a positive note. Good. We are seeing lots of good examples, and these should be highlighted, of police chiefs, police officers in their communities taking a knee with the protest. You getting into like an improv dance thing with the protest. Get into an improv barbecue, right? We are seeing examples of these things, and those are the things that need to be highlighted because y'all spoke about that as like what needs to happen, and it is happening, and we are seeing examples of that. That is what the cops and police and the authorities need to be doing.
There needs to be
instead
more
of
of that.
One or the other.
You're absolutely right, because I just saw something where the police chief of Chattanooga said, hey, if any of my officers agree with what happened to Mr. Floyd,
turn your badge in.
Turn in your badge right now. And the police chief in Flint actually said, hey, listen, we're with you. This is, let us know how we can better serve the community. So you're absolutely right. And I should have, because I know those examples and I should have brought that up, but you're definitely right. They are happening.
You made me think of something just then, Damien. The police are there, right? They're supposed to be there to protect and serve, right?
Yeah.
So I look at that because I've worked in the past and even a little bit with what I do now, right? It's customer service related. The customer is the citizen, right? In this scenario, whereas the cops, right, are the customer service reps, right? They're your customer service reps.
We pay their check. We're the boss. Right. It's
and
not backward.
And so really, what cops probably should be doing, if I could give them any advice, is to say, go to the communities, talk to the people, find out what it is that they need, find out how it is, how they would like to work with you. Because I don't think either, right, that all people are, say, fearful of the police or have, animosity towards the police. I mean, I don't. I've got cops in my family. One of my first cousins is a detective at Columbus Police. I think that that would be an approach as well too. The other thing about, like Chris, you mentioned about what they did in LA with recruiting from the community. This is one thing actually that Frank Jackson, the mayor of Cleveland here, I got like a love-hate relationship with him a little bit myself. I mean, I know him, I've talked to him, and sometimes I'm like, okay, I'll go along with you. And other times I'm like, right. But there was one thing that several years ago that they did here in Cleveland, and I thought about it. If that maybe he might have been right, and that was they used to have this home rule thing, right? Where basically if you were a cop in Cleveland, you had to live in Cleveland, right? And then that all got all busted out, and then all those cops that used to live in Cleveland, not all of them, but a good decent number of them, they moved out to the suburbs, right? So they are living like down in, say, maybe Brunswick or out here in Lakewood or, somewhere else. So they're more connected to their own communities and where they live, right? Versus where they work. You know what I mean? Because
you look at people as your peers,
yeah,
or you look at them as your servants, as your serfs, as your subjects.
And the
you're
argument,
there to reign over that neighborhood.
yeah,
They better not step out of line. Versus, these are my people. I
right.
went to this barbecue. She just graduated college. Hey, we
Right.
went to their wedding the other day. You're either a part of the community or you're outside.
Or you're right. And the argument, and I remember that the argument, for letting officers move out of the city came all down to like this idea of choice, basically. Well, we should be able to choose where we want to live, where we want to work. But I bet you right now, if you were to go through and pull probably all the officers that work for the city of Cleveland, for example, and it's not just Cleveland, it's like even in the suburbs, I mean, I live in Lakewood, there might be a cop that lives in the next city over or whatever, but I'd be curious to see a roster of many of all these cities where we just saw the protests and the looting. I would be real interested to see them pull the rosters and see where these people live and see how many are actually like in the community. Because when you look at a city like Cleveland, for example, right, that is majority Black. I'm talking Cleveland proper, not greater Cleveland. I'm talking about Cleveland, city of Cleveland. 380,000 citizens, right?
There
you go. and you look at that, right? So you have a city that is predominantly Black, and that's not reflective in that's not at all reflective in the police force. It's reflective. Interestingly enough, it's reflected in your elected officials. Cleveland has a Black mayor and a majority Black city council, right? And that's a topic for a whole nother show. But but not the police. And that's probably I would probably gamble my paycheck that's probably true in a lot of major cities and urban centers throughout the country. That's the case because you do see, right? The police, back to what you were saying before, Brian, the police brutality, it's white cops doing it, it's Black cops doing it and all, but one could even make the case that it could be potentially disproportionate, that it would be white cops on Blacks because of the fact that you literally have a majority of the police force is white. So
just on the ping pong balls and not mathematics.
Yeah, exactly. So
statistics will just that way regardless.
Yeah, I mean, there's got to be reforms. There's definitely going to have to be reforms in recruiting, in training, in like you had mentioned about de-escalation and all of that. I mean, and it's got to be top to down. Now with the Minneapolis police chief, I guess to answer that question for me, if I think if those other three guys aren't implicated in this, I think he should definitely be more vocal. I haven't really watched any of the stuff of him talking specifically, but I would like to see that the other three would be brought to justice as well. Because in my opinion, I think those guys are accessories. You know.
I don't know exactly what to charge them with.
Yeah, but at minimum, I would.
That video, I just wanted somebody to take a few steps and launch a shoulder, do a football tackle into this guy to get the fuck off. Like, there's a Simpsons joke. This isn't funny, obviously, but in the Simpsons, they are funny. And there's this joke, I think something with a clown, and he's hitting him, and the one kid goes, "Stop, stop! He's already dead." And in the Simpsons context, it's funny, but in this context, somebody had to see that he's handcuffed. It's over. Somebody take a charge and knock this guy off of him and stop this. I don't know exactly what to charge these three with, but they have to be charged with something.
Yeah,
because accessories to murder.
Had an obligation.
Yeah, I would think accessories.
They were watching a killing. They had an obligation to stop that shit.
There was a case I just saw this little.
Hey guys, I'm gonna go move to the. I'm gonna do my own moving here to the refrigerator. So.
Alrighty.
Tell us again.
Thanks, Chris.
It's way past my dinner time. So.
Chris, I appreciate you immensely, my brother. I appreciate you immensely. Can you please tell us where they can check out your videos from yesterday if they want to check it out one more time?
Okay, you can check it out at my Instagram. That's probably the easiest place to do it. It's Mr. XOF, Mr. Zofer, but it's spelled MisterXofer. And it's one of my highlights because it's been 24 hours since I posted it. But if you understand Instagram, you look at the highlights, there's little buttons up there. It shows different stories. I got one with the dogs. I got one where I went to LACMA. And now I have one that it's getting shared, people are seeing it, and it shows from beginning to end a whole protest. It moves like a mile down the street. It shows, shooting, gas, and no violence. The protesters being peaceful, hands up, don't shoot the whole time. And that
protesters in almost every city were awesome.
I saw it. It was chaos. It was scary. I still have adrenaline running through me from 2 days ago.
Yeah.
I probably got coronavirus from it, but it shows you that.
Chris, you said you got that Rona?
Not the Rona.
I don't know, man. Call me in 2 weeks, man.
We'll check on you.
I had my 46th birthday 3 days ago, and I didn't think this what would be happening this week is me running out in the middle of a pandemic.
Yeah.
Seeing the Grove turned into Mad Max and everything, but I'm glad I did it, and I hope y'all can watch it. And
I am. I just added you. I just requested to follow you. So
okay. All right, cool.
So I would definitely check it out because my son actually might be able to, he may be able to look at your work because he goes to high school and he's in fashion design, but he does video editing and things like that. And I asked him to join this podcast because he was so disappointed in what he saw, and but I think that he's still kind of trying to get it out of his system because, like I said, it went from literally rainbows to hell and like that. And
and you know what? Maybe we can talk about this some other time. There's something I wanted to talk about real quick. It's like conspiracy theory shit, but it's true.
I like this part.
Look this up. You were talking about bricks earlier. This is weird. I'm gonna leave it on this note because I don't know. We know this is some weird, mysterious thing, but there's part of me that feels like this is a big op. You know what I mean? Feels like this is a big orchestrated thing.
It really does.
To do all sorts of horrible things and basically just keep the rich and everyone else effed. There are large, look it up,
bricks,
and not like piles of bricks, like literally something that requires strong men to come and I mean we're talking big stacks.
They have Boston
of bricks that people are putting on street corners where shit's popping off or prime for looting. And these are bricks, solid square of bricks that anyone can just come up and get. Someone's putting those on street corners in LA. Someone's putting those areas where people are looting, and they're not like wrapped up and selling. They are ready to throw through windows.
Look,
who the fuck is doing this? And I can tell you, it's not Black Lives Matter.
No, but I can tell you, not only did we see bricks, but we saw like shopping carts in random areas. I saw that with my own two eyes, like where there were shopping carts and like I said, it was one of those things where some of the buildings were boarded up, but there are some that weren't. And again, unless you've been living under a rock, if you really, and again, I'm not advocating looting, but I can tell you that if I had a business in Cleveland or LA or Miami, and I saw what was going on in Minneapolis and everywhere else, I would be boarding up my business just because. So again, and like I said, and I don't want to beat a dead horse, but with my own two eyes, I saw where people were looting. They were looting, and the police were standing there in parade rest.
Yeah,
that's
what happened at the Grove, man. The police and it's mainly young people, loot the Grove. Why? Yeah. And why are big ass ready to throw through glass? Giant squares of bricks. This takes preparation. Like, this isn't something that because this shit just popped off in the last 48 hours.
Spontaneous, yeah.
I'll tell you what. I'm getting a message that my disc is almost full. So let's pause it here. I'm down to do this again, and we can do like a conspiracy theory one.
Oh, let's do that one next.
So here, let me do a cascading.
That took a lot of preparation. That took a lot of organization. Who the fuck is putting gangs of bricks?
Yeah.
And urging people to destroy property. It's not Black Lives Matter.
The other thing too, I want to say, pertaining to the cops too, is I was thinking about this while we were talking about this stuff. One thing that's interesting too is if you do something that is so egregious to break the law, right? There are laws on the books in states, right, where, for example, you're a public official and you breach the public trust. You can't be a politician in this state anymore, right? Or, for example, you're an attorney, you get disbarred. Yeah. Or you're a doctor, right? And you get charged with malpractice and you lose your license, right, to practice medicine. But there's nothing that, if you do something as a cop, right, where you lose your badge, revoked, right? Because like you said, right, Damien, with Brelo, he was able to go to another city, apply for a job.
In the same state, it wasn't California.
Yeah.
He literally over.
That's bold. I mean, that would be like if I were a bank robber and I robbed, the Huntington Bank up the street, right? And then I get, convicted or whatever, and I get out of jail, and the first place I go to apply for a job is then at Chase Bank.
But see,
really?
But see, James and Chris, and I know we got to wrap this up. Again, that goes to the culture. So he went somewhere where, where they would welcome him, ask it under whatever, people deserve second chances or whatever else.
Sure.
But again, and again, I think that when you look at some of these cops, they don't have one-offs. You know what I mean? Look at the guy with Mr. Floyd. Now I just got a message saying that they found fentanyl in his system and all this stuff. So just pray that that things don't go from bad to worse.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm worried they're setting it up too. I've seen the reports that he didn't die of asphyxiation. There's underlying cause, and it's like, bro, you can't.
We all saw a dude with his knee on him for 9 minutes, and him screaming, "I can breathe." You know what I mean? Come on.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's end on the place that we're united on. We want to see justice done up there. We're hoping for better days. Damien, do you want to plug anything? Do you want people to follow you online? James?
I'm on Instagram at I am Damien Lamar. My Facebook is the same. I mean, again, I just want to thank our panel and those watching, because I think that, again, I think that this is part of how we to James, and ode to James, this is how we make America great.
I agree. I'm with you there. I can't disagree with you there. I will not disagree with that statement, my friend.
To say it. We gotta cut that out and then turn it into a GIF and this is how we make it great. Happy 4th of July. James, do you want people to follow you? Are you on anywhere you want to tell people?
I'm on Facebook. You'll find James Bates. I'm on Twitter at I love James Bates.
You have to scroll down to the 193rd page past the to find you, right?
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
You know.
Yeah, the conversation goes and agree to disagree all day. It's annoying. It's funny. It's interesting, thought provoking. It's tough.
It is.
It's mental exercise. It's a waste of time. Who knows? But it lives on the Agree to Disagree show with the New American Media. Check out all those pages as well. So Christopher Sanders from Culver City, California. Damien Hall from Boston, Massachusetts. James Bates from Cleveland, Ohio. And myself here in Louisville, Kentucky. I want to thank each and every one of you for jumping in. This was more pleasurable than I was anticipating. I feel like we could do another 5 hours, but I feel like we all got to take a piss and get something to eat anyway. So let's do that, and let's reach out and maybe circle back and do this again sometime.
Let's do it again. I'm available anytime. Let's do it.
To be continued. All right. Thank you, guys. Take care.
All right. Signing out.
Love all of you.
Much love.
Peace.
All right.
This is awesome.
It was awesome. It was really great. I had fun doing this. Anytime, call me, let me know. I'll do this anytime. This is a good time talking to both of them.
Here's my thing. I'm praying to God that the recording works the way that it's supposed to and that the video comes out the way it's supposed to.
Yeah. It should be good. It should be okay. Yeah, it should be.
All right, man. We continue. You have a great night. Appreciate
you too. I'm going to bed now. All right.
This is the New American Media.